How's it going, everybody? Happy Tuesday. It's early, Matt. We're back. It's been a while since we've been on the early schedule.
Yeah, seems like I don't know if this is true, but it seems like we've been disrupted schedule-wise for
We absolutely
a
have.
few weeks in a row.
Yeah, absolutely have. It was one thing, it was another, it was all the things. But we're back on track finally now, and we've got a good episode this week. I'm excited. That was not very exciting the way I said that, but I am very excited. How's it going? Relatively nice gamer. Still love that name.
What have I done?
What have you done?
Nothing. It's fine.
You make me nervous when you just say things like that.
Oh God. No, we're good.
The entire script, it's been deleted. What would we do?
We've been through worse.
Have we?
No.
Would we just carry on? I think we would.
I don't know. I mean, we've lost a whole episode before, but never a script.
Yeah. I would just go.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem was we'd have to the hard part would be remembering everything that happens. I think we could remember what we want to say about the things that happened, but I don't think we could remember each and every little thing.
I think what I might do is I might just open up the chapter itself and skim over it, and it would probably allow me to remember what I had actually written about each part.
I think you're probably right. How's it going, Julie, Wildbow, David? Good to see you guys. Oh man, it's already hot in this room. I am ready for fall. Is it fall yet? The pumpkin spice latte comes back.
My maple tree in my front yard has its first red leaf, which, I mean, seems a bit early to me. Mid-August does not seem like fall to me, but
you are in a climate that has seasons.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. I think we are actually, for once, just ready to go. I don't think there's any more time we need to kill here.
Yeah, I'm gonna click the recordo.
Yeah, I'm gonna click the recordo too. Hey, Tesarwat. Good to see you. We're about to get started here. We're gonna try to start. Well, it's 10 minutes past, but we're trying to start relatively on time for us. All right. Let's do a moment of silence for Swansong. All right. Are you ready?
Love those dual purpose moments of silence. They're so much more useful and respectful.
I know, exactly. She would appreciate it because it's for her, but also there's a reason.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Okay.
All right. Enjoy the show, everyone. How's it going, Jay? We'll see you guys in a couple of hours. All right. Let's go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to We've Got Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of parahumans. My name is little old me, Matt Freeman, and this is my co-host who looks up at me with eyes that flash, Scott Daly.
Eyes that Are you breastfeeding me in this scenario?
It's parahumans. Powers are wacky.
Gross. This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of urethra bugs, making me cry, and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. The battle against Teacher reaches its climax as we set up shop in some of the worst minds parahumans has to offer. Then, Path C claims its first victims as Byron is wounded by an explosion and Ashley is killed by being too much of a badass for her body to handle. In the end, Ashley's sacrifice saves the day and the battle is won, but it's Path C, so Teacher escapes, promising that when the day comes, the heroes will wish they sided with him. Ominous. Matt, what did you think of these 2 chapters and this entire arc?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just wish that someone who isn't familiar with the story could listen to that intro and hear your urethra bugs juxtaposed with making you cry. I don't it just
It's
but
it's the magic of parahumans.
yeah. I mean, these were great. Like we've said many times that one of Walbo's fortes is the ability to very quickly get you into the head of very different kinds of people. And in these two chapters, we switch point of view several times, and we get in the heads of several different characters, and each of them is really given what I call the Wildbow treatment. In fact, when we were talking earlier, I just offhandedly referred to it as Wildbowizing the characters, um, and trusted you to get what I meant.
Yes.
And so that for me is one of the most fun parts of this chapter is the fact that we so rapidly get these wonderful tours of the minds of these horrible creatures. And then, of course, setting that aside, just these are some of the most, intense and significant chapters in the story, because frankly, one of the most significant events in the whole story up to this point occurs in these chapters.
Yeah, it's the death of one of our major characters.
Yeah.
I think everyone was pretty, knocked back by Vista's death that turned out to not be a death. But this is way bigger than that. In the context of the story, I know people have a lot of attachment to Vista as a character, but in the context of this story, Ashley's death is huge. And it's emotional. It's going to be a tough conversation to have. I told you I broke down a little bit while just writing the part of the script that I have to now recite as we get to that part. But
yeah,
I agree with you. There's some stuff that I want to pay attention to here. Some different things that these chapters do. I mean, just like structurally, the fact that we've broken away from our protagonist for 3 chapters in a row, that the entire conclusion of this giant battle and this whole kind of teacher sub arc of the story, or at least for now, ends, not with our main character, with different characters in interludes that are character hopping. And really, I think we're going to spend some time when we get there really diving into that concept and that the choices there and what we think the book is doing with them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think we're also going to have a lot of stuff to say about the thematic stuff that this whole arc has been doing and that these chapters are doing in particular.
Yeah.
In fact, I think one of the first things that we say about the chapter is going to be referencing the themes of this arc. But before we get into talking about the chapter, we do have some quick announcements. Some business, yeah. So we at Doof Media have changed around our reward tiers on Patreon a little bit. So as you probably know, if you listen, we are on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. And basically, the long and short of it is there is now a new $5 tier, which allows you access to an exclusive hangout session with me and Scott and probably some of the other doofers. Yeah. Of which there are now more than a handful.
Yes.
So that's entirely new, and of course that also gives you access to the Discord and to the recording sessions that we do. And then we've rearranged some of the higher tiers just a bit to make certain things more appealing and also more reasonable on our end.
Yeah, we bit a little bit too much off on some of these rewards. So we're kind of, I think we've been in this reward structure for a year now, and we've learned a lot of lessons from that year. And we want to continue giving great bonus content. We know a lot of people that support us do it just because they like what we do, but we want people to feel like they're getting value out of it. So I think a lot of our adjusting and changing around was to dual accomplish those objectives, is giving people value, but also doing things that are reasonable and achievable for us.
Yeah.
Which is difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Specifically what we've done is you can still force us to watch a movie or read a short story at the lower $20 level, but you have to pay the higher tier to make us watch a TV show season.
Yeah. Which I think when we came up with this idea, we were not expecting the popularity that people would have with television seasons, and we had not properly planned for that. And that is it's a lot for us, and we want to give people the opportunity to still do that because we know some people are very passionate about their anime, but we we wanted to make a little more achievable for us.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done. And this is, if you are someone who has donated at this tier in the past and you're like, wait a minute, what about me? You're fine. It is only every person that becomes a patron from, I think it was, when did we do it? Like Friday?
I think it was, for some reason I thought it was like the first, but no, I don't think that's right.
No,
it was
it wasn't the first, because it was supposed to be the first originally, and then someone missed the deadline. Whoops. And that person is me.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if the $5 tier and the $20 tier don't appeal to you, the $10 tier now gives you access to some kind of exclusive written content from me and Scott. Scott writes short, funny and succinct reviews of all the things that he reads watches, whatever, in a month. And then he posts those. Yeah, consume. So if you like Scott's brain, which I think we all do.
I don't know if I like my brain, but sure.
Well, so basically, like, I don't know. I really enjoy reading his short review, his short content, because it exposes me to a lot more stuff than I would necessarily otherwise know about. So
yeah. So yeah, and Matt will have some exclusive content on there at that level as well. We're also kind of feeling this is a new thing for us as well, so we're feeling it out. We appreciate you guys, just kind of testing these waters with us as we go and try new things. We want to keep mixing things up, keep getting you guys new things, stuff like that. So you can find out all the information on that if you head on over to our Patreon account. We've broken the tiers down by bullet points to make it very easy to understand what you get at each tier. And so you can see all that over there. So if you have never supported us before, it's a great time to. If you want to shift around your donation level based on the new rules, that's fine too. Just head on over there and see what there is to see. Yeah.
All right. Well, we won't talk about that anymore. We're going to get on into the chapter now.
Yeah. Let's give the people what they want.
15.y. And here we are continuing the pattern from 15.x, where we're rotating through multiple villain POVs, orbiting our particular breakthrough characters as they execute the plan. And we start with Secondhand, this fucking guy. Continuing our theme of death being liminal and complex rather than final and simple, he calls the thralls zombies. And I just love the connotations here, because colloquially, a zombie is a dead person who has come back to life transformed. And by that definition of zombie, there's a lot of zombies in this arc. There's a lot of people come back from the dead. There's a lot of, in this story at large, there's a lot of people who we thought were dead and they're not actually dead. This happens a bunch of times, actually. Another definition of a zombie could just be somebody who is mindless or without will, which, is another thing we've seen pretty often in this story. People whose minds have been changed or controlled against their will. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I think he obviously, in this instance, he's talking about the latter definition, right? He's talking about the mindless, will-less people. And that's what he's called them. But I love the idea of taking that other meaning of it. I love the idea of viewing these people as people that have been killed and are reanimated to serve this purpose. Like it's very much setting up this idea that life as a teacher thrall, your old life is dead and gone, and this is a new, different life. Like, it's not, being a teacher thrall is not something you come back from, right? It's not like your traditional, I'm just gonna go work for this guy for a bit and then I'm just done with that.
Well, I think
it is a kind of dying.
Yeah, I think there's this idea, especially in this arc, that death is something like a spectrum, and it may even go beyond this arc. This idea that, like, having your mind altered, having your will stolen is a kind of death, and death, and then farther down the spectrum, there's those who have died and then been brought back to life, different and changed, and not the same person they were at all anymore, and you can never get back to the person that you were. I mean, you could even say that a trauma is a little death, right? It's a little change that you're never quite the same afterward.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things I love about this is in this arc dying, where we're talking about these things, where you're absolutely right that we're talking about death as not something that's black and white, that is more spectrum based. We have Cauldron rearing its ugly head again, and the moral choices and decision making around Cauldron rearing its ugly head. And I think those two things combined make for something very interesting here, because we're talking about people who made choices and did certain things in order to save the human race from death, right? But we're complicating that concept now. Like, it's one thing to value, the torture of 400,000 human lives versus the death of billions, right? That's
Mhm.
an easy concept, but when you start introducing this concept of death as this not clear cut thing, it complicates those equations a whole lot. And I think that's one of the things that our characters, I think that's one of the things we're going to see by the end of these two chapters that Contessa herself struggled with and ultimately reached a conclusion on.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that one thing I've never said on the show is that before doing any of these worm shows, the very phrase "fate worse than death" was absurd to me because I was like, death is obviously the worst thing. Like you can always bounce back from anything that isn't death. Like no matter how bad it is, you can you can get therapy, you can recover, you can get back to a healthy self. And I think these stories have kind of shown me like not really. Like yeah, you can probably like maybe it's true that you can recover from anything. Maybe it's not true. But recover doesn't necessarily mean you're back to who you were.
Yeah.
That person is dead. This is a new person. So the idea of there being fates worse than death, that the story has explored, has actually changed my mind on this concept quite a bit,
Yeah. And
and really made the concept more complicated to me.
yeah, I mean, I think that changes the entire moral calculus of choices too, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
mean, that complicates things in a way that we don't fully, that it's really difficult for people to grasp. And um, I think it's fascinating, and I love that this arc in particular really helped us dive into that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Cool.
I do think before we move on from this, I think it is very interesting that we see this pushback from Final Hour to this label of zombie, right? He says, don't call them that. He resists this idea that they're zombies. He resists this idea that they're not people. Like, we see him as a person who is treating this one thrall as if she's a woman. He's coaching her and saying, don't aim there, aim somewhere else, not as just like a mindless zombie that he doesn't have to treat as less than human, which is interesting because I'm not going to sit here and say Final Hour is a good person. We see very explicitly later in this chapter that none of these guys are good people at all. But it is interesting that he draws the line there. He draws the line at calling them a zombie. It's like, it's almost as if he's rationalized away what's happening here, and that is too close to ripping down that rationalization.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think that everybody has to have their narrative where they're the hero of their story,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes against his narrative to make fun of the people they're already abusing.
Yeah.
This and yes, you were right. This does not make him a good person.
No, not at all.
So I want to pay some attention to the little bits of inner life and perspective that Wildbow shows us as one of the many tools for rapidly giving us a sense of who a character is. Like this quote: "Secondhand couldn't help but feel that having that much weight on one side of his body would fuck up his back into oblivion." And I just thought that was like it really snaps you into this person's head because it's like the things it makes you aware of the kinds of things he notices and pays attention to.
Yeah.
It's a kind of funny. It's a kind of funny phrasing also. Like fuck up his back into oblivion is. It just strikes me as an amusing way of putting that.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense for a character who has to be so acutely aware of the amount of weight he's carrying on himself just because of how his power works, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of defines his personality in a different kind of way to where he would notice that kind of stuff. It's really great. I agree. Like, it is, I mean, I'm not saying that no other author does this, and I'm sure there's many skilled authors that do things like this, but it is remarkable how often we see it with these characters. I mean, just in this section, right? Like,
Yeah.
not only that, but you have these little bits here where he mentions zombies were in single file, the buff ones lining up behind the faux condom dispenser. He calls his gas mask, or his oxygen mask that he has to wear when he's using his power, his gimp mask, and he calls it that with little affection. And these are just little tiny beats that just help flesh out who this guy is, like his type of personality. And it's really subtle. He does a lot of very similar things with Ingenue in the next section as well. And I think it's so efficient in getting your head around who these people are.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this may be the most strained metaphor in the universe, but I think about those YouTube channels or like the Bob Ross thing where you're watching someone paint a painting in real time, and your sense of what the painting is going to be evolves gradually, right? And in the course of reading what is basically a short story, like I mean, maybe it's weird to call it that, but I sort of call these little snippets of a side character like basically a short story. You kind
Yeah.
of do get a beginning, middle, and end with each of them. Um, Wildbow has to start from a kind of base and then build upon that, and so everything that he builds up from there has to be consistent with the base. And so I love that he uses, like you pointed out, these, I think all three of these quotes that we have are from pretty early in this section,
They are, yeah.
and he's giving us these little brushstrokes to define who this is that we're the head of.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
the type of thing where like it's really important, and it's very easy to miss out on, like when you're focusing on trying to build like the actual plot of the story, right? Like we're in this section. What happens in this section? Well, Secondhand goes and kills or severely hurts Byron, right? That's what happens in the section. That's the plot, and it's very easy to just get swept up in pushing that plot forward. But you really do have to lay this groundwork to understand this guy, or this perspective is just not going to work.
Yeah, I agree. So as he is suiting up, Secondhand leers at one of the zombies, and it's revolting.
Yep, it's gross. Especially when he's frozen in time a little bit later, and then just like is trying to get an angle to look down her shirt, and says this like deliciously awful line here, which is just like, if I asked teacher for you, would he give you to me? It's just disgusting. Like it goes out of its way here. The text goes out of its way to get us to understand how much of a piece of shit this guy is, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right. I mean, I think it's really interesting later when he's like still telling himself this story about like, man, I didn't used to be this bad, man.
yeah.
It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's all the Fallen's fault. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's all Fallen's fault.
Yeah.
So I love this line, this single sentence. I love how much this tells us about the speedrunners. The four squared up, each facing the others, a huddle without closeness.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. A huddle without closeness. Like everything is conveyed there, right?
Yeah.
Like who these guys are, what they feel about each other. And the thing that I like about this is we're going to see throughout this first chapter as compared to the last chapter, all these different teams on teacher side, and this concept of loyalty to teacher, and this concept of loyalty to each other within your team, and how all these different teams have differing senses of that, right? Like Wasp Commander had this guy with this team that liked each other and was loyal to each other and wanted to be together. Saint and his two guys, like the three of them together were like, they cared about each other. Like they lost one of their members and they were legitimately upset and unsure of what to do next. And then you got these guys who are just, it's like an arrangement of convenience, and that's it, nothing more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this tracks, but it seems like we've moved from the least monstrous to the most monstrous, pretty much linearly over the course of these three last chapters.
Yeah, I'd take that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Hey, Scott, I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but these guys suck. Final Hour reached out with his ordinary gauntlet free hand. We tough it through today. We go home to obscene orgies, girls with zero morals, drugs, and luxury. This is what we've been working for all this time. Now we pay our dues once in a while, keep the plate spinning. And if all the plates fall, end of days intoned, we're in the best position to rule over whatever things look like after. And then Secondhand nods just to confirm that he's totally on board with this.
Yep. Cool.
So,
Great, guys. Way to go.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's so funny because like Saint and his crew were convinced that we're on this team because they were convinced that what teacher was doing was the right thing, right? Like that this is the right and necessary thing, and everyone else is fighting against them are just misguided. These guys don't give a shit. They don't care. This is all about what is best for them. And you know, this is the third or fourth beat we've had in this arc of people talking about just getting through this today and then going to tomorrow and what we want tomorrow. And you can see the value system in these people based on what that tomorrow looks like. Like for Victoria, it's hot chocolate with Kenzie and Ashley. For Saint and his crew, or was it Saint? Yeah, I think it was Saint and I'm blanking on his name.
Misha.
Thank you. It's just, like coming together and recuperating together. And for these guys, it's just partying.
Orgies. Yep.
Zero morals, drugs, luxury, orgies. Not that I'm kink shaming orgies. Knock yourself out, people. But it's just, I think it just shows why, like, what they're doing here, why they're here in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So next we're treated to some really fun power usage as we witness Secondhand laboriously trudge his way through the breach they've created with the laser, fighting against air resistance the whole time, in a way that just apparently is just hell in his body and probably causes permanent physical damage to use for extended periods like he's doing. So yet again, Wildbow thinks of a novel and fun implementation of the Speedster power set.
Yep.
And then we have Secondhand listening to an audiobook as he makes his way down the hall, and this gives us a sense of how goddamn long this is taking him.
Yeah, so I love this power. I love this mix of amazing and useful, but absolutely terrible to use. It fits right in line with everything we know about shards and everything we know about how powers work in this universe. The cost it takes on him. You understand why they were so willing to like link up with Love Lost and Cradle and them, right? To share tech stuff, because we basically get told here by Secondhand that if it wasn't for the new equipment he was using, the new suit he was wearing, that like he couldn't even be doing this. And I think that's fascinating. But out of all this, the part that I love the most is the audiobook. Mm-hmm. I think this is it's such a simple and effective communicative tool to get a reader's head around how much time is going, right? Like you could very easily just go, oh, we'll just have him look at his watch as he's running, right? Or and then like you said, 2 hours have gone by, 4 hours have gone by, but that wouldn't have the same effect. First of all, because like our character probably wouldn't be looking at his watch constantly and calculating that, because he's done this before and he knows how long it takes. Like, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense for the character. But also, there's just a sense of understanding here in the idea that it's an audiobook. Like, I think most people, if they never listen to an audiobook, they're generally aware of how long an audiobook is. So the fact that he listens to an entire book, except for like the first 2 chapters, just while walking down this hallway, really, really sells the length of time here in a way that I don't think anything else could.
Oh, absolutely. It makes it so much more agonizing than if you said like it had been 3 hours or something. It's more visceral.
Yeah,
I absolutely adore that.
Yeah, just like the time, just listing, it's arbitrary, right? There's no meat to it. There's no connection to it, because 3 hours can feel like it takes forever, or it can feel like it goes by pretty quickly, depending on your frame of mind. But an entire audiobook, that works. Yeah. And it also is a great character moment, because we get to see here that the audiobook he's listening to is something that was recommended to him by End of Days. It never says what it is, because he can't bother to go back and listen to the title, but it is obviously something religious, because he says specifically that if nothing else, it would help him walk the walk and talk the talk amongst Earthsea and the Fallen. So these are hyper-religious groups that they are allied with out of convenience. They don't actually agree with them in any kind of philosophical way. So he's reading this audiobook in order to fake it a little bit.
Yeah. Also, I think it's worth pointing out Wildbow's ability to keep track of stuff over like a million arcs, because the fact that, or a million words, I should say, the fact that Secondhand was making daily walkthroughs of Hollow Point was explicitly mentioned when they were talking about, when Breakthrough was talking about where to put their base. They were like, we have to put it outside of a certain range, because the speedrunners have somebody who checks out the entire basically the entire territory.
Yeah.
And so he was having to do this every day, and he explicitly references that here. So I just think it's a fun, like, yep, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
This guy was just suffering.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because we knew his power, right? But we knew it externally. Oh, he just like can freeze time and move. Cool. But like this is so much worse than any of that.
Yep. So he finds Capricorn Orange and Victoria making their way down a hallway, and he heads them off, and he plants mines ahead of them, and then he detonates them when the heroes are in range. Victoria hits him hard with her aura, and he finds that he can't escape it even when he enters his speedster state.
Ha!
So as he makes his way back past them, he finds that it's actually Capricorn Blue who has been badly wounded. seemingly having absorbed the blast, and spared Victoria the brunt of it.
Yeah, we talked last week about how using Contessa in this story is walking a very, very fine line, right? And I still think it is. But using Contessa here in this moment is just a perfect way to mine drama out of your story, I think. We know, or at least we have a reasonable amount of certainty, that at the end of this thing, at least 2 members of Breakthrough won't be walking away from it. And thanks to Capricorn's making the thoughts that most of the fandom had textual, we're pretty certain that one of them is going to be one of the Capricorn brothers, right? Just because of the extended time which they're hurt. That's something that Tristan, or was it Byron? Capricorn verbalized as a probability.
Yeah, it was Byron, and yeah, I mean that's where my money is right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yeah. But because we know that though, this whole moment plays out like a car crash we know is coming but can't stop, right? This guy is coming, the bombs are going to blow up, there's nothing we can do. We're in his perspective, so we've lost agency on our characters. We don't get to see them make the choices and make the decisions because we're in this third party, and so we just have to watch it happen.
And it's
Go ahead.
It's just such a horrible, sickening way to go about it too.
Yeah.
Like we're watching these heroes who we love running into a like an IED type situation where it's just like that's just not even. There's no like glory to that. It's not like it's not badass the way Ashley gets to have her outro. It's just that's low and it just sucks.
Yeah, especially since the book has gone out of its way to really make us hate this guy, right? Like he's a miserable piece of shit that we don't like, that has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and this is the guy that's going to take down our boy.
Right.
I do like that you pulled out that small detail where he is on top of Victoria. He's the one injured and losing blood, which, as you said, seems to indicate that he shielded her from the blow. Intentionally or no, we don't actually know that. That's just kind of the implication here. I mean, the book takes the time to show it to us. So
yeah.
I mean, I find that a really interesting detail just because, like, you're kind of thinking in your head how these different characters are going to react to these things. Victoria is a person who has a force field. Of course, she can't use it in close quarters for obvious reasons, but she does have a force field. So there is a version of Victoria that could have protected Byron from this blast and said she was protected and he was hurt. And then, of course, that other little beat where it was Tristan before, right? Like when he's placed the bombs, the text specifically says here, not the goat Capricorn, interestingly enough, the fish. They must have changed or been changing. So when you're seeing these things, the book is feeding you these things like, and that I think are like setting up where the drama, where the conflict is going to go going into the future. Because now you have a Tristan who's probably was either just recently changed or in the process of changing to Byron when the bombs go off. There's going to be some guilt there, right? You have Victoria that probably, knowing Victoria, probably going to say, I should have protected him, not the other way around. There's going to be some guilt there, too. I like how these things are done through a third party.
Yeah, me too. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't actually know that Tristan is okay until the next chapter, right?
Correct, yeah.
So the idea that this bomb hit them while they were changing leaves us with the sense that maybe it has maimed both of them, you know?
Yeah.
And we know that's not the case, but Wildbow has left us with this horrible, horrible situation. Thank you, Wildbow. Yeah.
I like it though. I think it's some small details told from that external point of view that means stuff to us and not the character. And I think that makes them land in a different way.
Sure. Yeah, right. I mean, I think this is one of those moments where I want to like pause and say, I think it can feel very dry the way we analyze, just because like that's just what analysis is. You're kind of teasing things apart. But I want to like just say like, man, this sucked. Like this hurt to have this happen to our character.
And I want to kind of talk about Byron a bit, and you know, in the moment where you realize, as soon as you know Tristan is okay, and you realize that it's Byron that was hurt, like how much everything that this story was doing up until this point in this arc clicks into place. I think we're going to wait to do that until we get to Byron's section, but I want to spend some time on that because I think it's just really good writing.
Yeah, me too. So our next POV is Miranda, aka Ingenue,
Ugh.
who I gave way too much slack based on her portrayal in Worm, which you could probably read a lot into if you wanted.
I don't remember. I have zero memory of what we said about Ingenue back in Worm.
I mean, my recollection, which may be wrong, is like it's really interesting how harsh Chevalier is being toward her when she just doesn't seem that bad. And now
Ouch,
we
Matt.
learn that her whole like not seeming that bad is like the whole reason why she's dangerous. Actually,
She fucking whammied you, Matt. You be
she did.
careful.
She got me. I'm susceptible to her charms.
Yeah. She's awful. Just awful.
Yeah.
But delightful. And we'll get
Yes.
into that in a sec.
Yeah. As we become more monstrous, we become more like less just sick and shitty and more awesome,
Yeah.
which is more enjoyable, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
So a note that the first POV began with zombies, and the second POV begins with "quote unquote" the shadows of the dead. And here, of course, she's referring to the flock, Valkyrie's flock, kind of retreating. But again, this connotation of the dead lurking.
Yeah. Yeah, the dead that aren't dead, right? It's
Yeah.
I'm so glad you pulled that out because I really love it. I really enjoy all this connotation and this idea, the central idea that you grasp upon in the first part of the chapter of death being the spectrum is a thing that, you know, we don't see it that way. Human beings generally are like, well, there's dead and then there's not dead,
Right.
but no, not in this world.
I think even in our world, it's more of a spectrum, but
Yeah.
we just very, very rarely encounter the edge cases, or when we encounter them, we don't see it as such.
Sure, and I mean, there's all kinds of different, you know, belief systems that look at death differently, right? But those are still. I mean, yeah, there's death is complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I even realized how complicated until this book.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so we learned that Ingenue is exactly as fucked up as Chevalier said she was. She seduces people into doing her dirty work for her, taking over the birdcage cell block, for example. Or in some cases, maybe she just directly makes people crazy. It's kind of hard to say. One way or another, people who get in her way met with unfortunate ends. And here in the story, she's taking a great deal of satisfaction in holding her own against Valkyrie's flock.
I mean, is it weird that I find this character fun in like the most fucked up way possible? Because I do.
I don't think it's weird. I mean, she's evil in a way that we don't normally get, just like, oh, this person's just fucking evil.
And she just enjoys it. She just
Yeah.
loves it. Like she takes pleasure in how fucked up she is.
Yeah.
Like I like she's talking about, oh, you know, yeah, I just like batted my eyes at this man, and then of course there was the blowjobs and the anal and the sex, but I don't like dwelling on that part of it because being that sweet sort of virginal was a state of mind, and dwelling on the lurid particulars made that harder. And it's just like, holy shit! Like it's wonderful and fucked up all at the same time.
And I think part of it is like she's very self-aware, actually. Like it's pretty clear, like she's not in denial. Like this isn't her telling herself like a story. This is just her bragging to herself.
Yeah, to herself, right? I mean, that's the best part is like she doesn't know we're here. So like, yeah, this is her just, you know, reliving her past because she's proud of it. Like this she sees Valkyrie and she sees this as a moment of victory that was a long time coming, like re-going over everything she did in the birdcage and her moment of triumph to getting to this point. And I just love it because like she's like, I only got the job because no one else wanted it. Well, except for this girl and this girl. And yeah, but they all just met unfortunate accidents. And it's like, oh, it's so perfect. I love it. I love it. Like there's this moment here where she says the most powerful woman in all of the realities. And look at that. Poor thing lost her powers right when she needed them. She got in Miranda's way and look at that. She was removed. Like that's the story repeats that phrase "look at that" twice in 2 paragraphs, and I think that just really like it sells like her attitude in
Absolutely.
Like in it. Oh, I love it so much. Like she's a piece of shit. I hate her,
right?
But I love her.
I think my brain voice even actually read it like, and look at that,
right?
You know,
exactly.
just want to strangle her, but at the same time, you're like, that's that's evil. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's awareness. You're absolutely right. There's awareness to everything she does, because even in this bit where she's like stretching and causing her dress to rise up just a little bit, like knowing it's a little too short, knowing that Scapegoat is gonna see it, knowing that he'll look at it, and knowing that he'll be caught and look away embarrassed, because Christian boys were always the hungriest. It's
Yeah.
it's evil, but yeah, it is delightful. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it so much.
She's always scamming.
Yeah.
So we learned that Scapegoat, or the Black Goat, is keeping Ingenue's helpers hale and hearty by transferring all the accumulated injuries onto a small handful of thralls who are only present for that purpose.
Cool.
Yeah.
I bet all these people agreed to that totally and didn't have any objection to it at all.
Yeah, they're probably getting paid a lot for taking on
Sure.
a whole bunch of fatal injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Black Goat makes the double mistake of not listening to Ingenue and then insinuating that she's capable of making mistakes. So she has him torn apart. And she doesn't seem too bothered at the idea that she might have killed him, actually.
Nope.
So I think this scene serves the dual purpose of introducing us to Spawner and what his whole deal is, in addition to, showing what a monster Ingenue is and what she's willing to do if somebody crosses her.
Yeah, I mean, we'll dive into him a little bit more in the next chapter, but he is that bonesaw creation, and he's awful.
Yep.
I like this a lot. I like what she does to Black Goat, because I think there is a certain amount of you that sees her going down memory lane and talking about all these terrible things she's done as like past events. And then so the book defines these past events and then goes on to establish that she's still the same person. She's still doing it. Like, this is someone that's not even against her. They're on the same side. They have the same goal, ostensibly. It doesn't actually seem that they do once we learn a little bit more about her, and it's literally just out of spite. It's just to prove that she can. And it's like, she's like making a pouty face at him and like, please, can I? And then just like brutally has him ripped apart.
Yeah.
And it's,
I think and I don't know if I necessarily read this exactly right the first time, but, and correct me if I'm misreading it, but she doesn't tell Spawner to do that. Spawner is like pissed off, and she doesn't give him like a little stroke, and that pisses him off even more. And then and I think what happens is she just knows, like, oh, he's furious and he wants to earn my favor.
Yeah.
And so she just says, you do what you need to do.
That's
and
absolutely
then he goes
right. Yeah.
And then he goes and does what she does want him to do. So it's like she gets to have this story where it's like, oh poor little old me, and but she absolutely caused this to happen, right? Like, not through mind control in the classic sense of like she's making Spawner do this, but she makes him love her, and then he does these things, and then it's what she wanted. So
yeah, it's like it's the crazy lady like trope, like made manifest, right? Like, it's the worst possible connotation, and again, she's knowingly doing that. Like, it's that she has no delusion about what she's doing here.
Yeah, I think that's true.
There is this moment that I wanted to point out here where Ingenue calls the thralls dolls, and Scapegoat pushes back against that, similar to how Final Hour pushed back against the use of zombies. He says thralls or bodies, not dolls. And I think, just like it was with Final Hour, this is our character like making certain rules for how he references these things, and other terms go up against his own self-narrative, and he can't handle it.
Yeah, it reminds me of when he actually semi-altruistically healed someone in the prison. I mean, he was expecting, like, he was sort of doing it for future favors, but I mean, he did put himself at risk. So like, he's not 100% a bad person, but here it's like, I think he's crossed enough lines that we can say he's a monster, but he's still not able to, still doesn't see himself that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what do you think it is about the phrase dolls that crosses that line for him? That they're just playthings, that it's just that they move beyond a tool to just a plaything? Because like, it's just a body is dehumanizing as possible. They're not a person, they're just a body. So he's completely fine treating them as objects. It's just how the objects are used that he seems to draw the line at.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's just a certain way that he feels comfortable thinking about them, and anytime that's perturbed, it's upsetting to him,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why exactly.
And she kind of makes a guys and dolls reference here, right? Because she
Uh-huh.
says, it's all dolls and boys, goat.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
So then Swan Song shows up, a total hero entrance, complete with stance and one-liner.
Yes.
She reminds Ingenue of herself, especially when she sees Swan Song's dry mouth and other signs of weakness, plus her trademark performative arrogance.
Oh, it's wonderful. It is a really hero entrance. Like open the door and make sure it stays open. It's like,
Yeah,
ah.
yeah,
I want to talk about the dry mouth a little bit, because we get a little more information about this, and I think it's very revealing and wonderful information. We talked last week about how we thought that maybe this was a sign that there was some internal bleeding going on because, you know, being extremely thirsty is a sign that you are bleeding internally. And the book basically says, no, that's not it. It's something to do with her meds. It's a symptom of the medication she takes. And Ingenue says either she doubled up on medication to make sure it works, or her injury and the meds she took for her injury like had a reaction with her normal set of meds and is causing them to react more strongly. And I like this a lot because I like the first one more just thematically. I like the idea that, like, you know, Swan Song, aware of the situation she was getting into, like skirting the line with hurting people, and indeed in a couple places taking lives accidentally, takes a second dose, doubles up on her dose to make sure she gets through it. I think it does something really important, which is remind us that Swan Song's entire existence is on this line, right? That she's constantly just riding this line between losing it and killing everyone, um, and and like controlling herself,
yeah,
right? So I love, like, I think it's important to us to remember that. It's important for us here in this final moment of Swan Song to remember that is her existence. That is her life. Her life is of on the edge of a knife, and she's suffering.
yeah. I like your read there because I didn't actually take what Ingenue was saying here at face value. I was like, yeah, she's just guessing, and I still think it's probably the internal bleeding thing. Like, why would Ingenue have this insight? But it's like, well, I don't know. Like Ingenue has a reason for knowing about this kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is established in the text. Like the text goes out of its way to give her some credibility and say, like, yeah, she had to pay attention to her girls in the cell block. So she probably has an eye for this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, she probably is right about her analysis here.
And it's not just the dry mouth. She sees, you know, twitching. She sees like eye twitching, like medication symptoms. I think
Yeah,
is something that Ingenue picks up on here and is pretty explicit, I think. So I trust it.
yeah,
And yeah, I like that a lot. I think it's really important. Really, really important.
yeah. So there's this interesting bit that follows where Ingenue tries to engage Ashley in a conversation because, according to Ingenue, she's bored. But she actually seems genuine about it. Like I actually believe her when she's like, "Fuck it, Contessa is loose. We're gonna lose. Might as well just chat, earn some favor for myself."
Yeah, I agree with you. I kind of take her at face value there too, just because she doesn't care, and we've kind of moved through these teams, you know, just like we're moving through teams that are, you know, more and more monstrous. I think we're moving through teams that are less and less loyal to Teacher. You know, starting from Wasp Commander, moving on up into Ingenue, who is loyal only to herself, really,
Yeah,
and just is in this thing as convenience. She gets power boosted out of it, right? Like she benefits from Teacher's involvement, but it doesn't seem like she's has any real skin in this game, outside of how she can benefit.
yeah. I mean, my understanding is that Teacher has taken all of his kind of core lieutenants and he's let them keep their free will using Scapegoat's power.
Yeah, yeah,
So she legitimately can say like, yeah, he doesn't have a hold over me.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
What I really love about this moment is for me, and I don't know if I'm the only one that thought this, but for me, there was going to be this moment where you think Ingenue is like going to try to convince Ashley to join her, right? Like this moment where Ashley accuses her of playing both sides, and she says, "Don't we all?" Kind of. And
hmm
I think this is a perfect Swan Song moment because, like, playing both sides is something that is a question that has been around Ashley since the beginning, right? I mean, this idea that she was only going to be a hero for as long as it worked out, and then was definitely going to go back to being a villain. That was always what was going to happen. She was pretending to be a villain back in the whole
Hollow Point.
Thank you, Hollow Point area. It's this ongoing question of which side are you? Are you the damsel side? Are you the Ashley side? And it seems like this could be setting up to like the last temptation of Swan Song here. You know, like Ingenue is going to be like, join me, come with me. And I really didn't want that to happen. Like I was like, oh no, we're not doing this, are we? And it's so wonderful to me that we're not, that this is just like that. Ashley at this point in the story knows exactly who she is. Complexity or not, she knows who she is. She knows what she wants. She knows what she wants to be. And she's just here to be the hero, to fuck up the bad guy, and to complete her mission. And I like that we kind of lean into that for like a little bit, and then it's like immediately squashed. Like, nope, fuck you.
Right. Yeah. All she's doing is basically waiting until she can get a little bit closer.
Yep.
And she does. She tries to blast Ingenue. Although she hesitates just a fraction of a second before doing it, which allows time for Ingenue's servants to protect her, to give her power immunity. And then Ingenue uses her new boosted power that allows her to interfere with and manipulate others' powers, now at a distance and not requiring touch, in order to highly disrupt Ashley's ability to control her power.
Yeah, so she lands on the ground hard, really hard. And we know she's already injured, so that hurts even more.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that hesitation real quick, because I think that's really important. Because damsel of distress does not hesitate in that moment, right? She just goes for the kill immediately. No hesitation. But Ashley does. Swan Song does. That's the person she is. And that moment of hesitation is ultimately kind of what results in her death, right? Because if she hadn't have hesitated there, Ingenue might have been killed. She wouldn't have. I mean, you never know. Like, right, we can't know for sure, certain, but that hesitation seems to lead down a chain of events that ends in Ashley's death. So is the lesson here then hesitating is wrong? Be the cold-blooded killer, be the damsel? No, I don't think so. And I think that leads into the part of Ashley's death and the significance of Ashley's death here that I love the most. But we gotta get to that in a little bit.
Okay, let's do it.
So put a pin in that, and I'm gonna remember to take the pin out this time. I promise.
Yeah, don't worry. We don't leave pins in things on this podcast. So we snap very briefly over to Last Minute before this chapter wraps up, as Last Minute reacts to Secondhand disappearing, instantly hearing the mine detonate, and then Secondhand returning to report the foreboding success.
Yeah, I like this moment. I do. It feels a little weird to me. Like, it feels like this moment that, like, it wanted to, like, the chapter wanted to end on this big bang moment, right? Where Secondhand that says one of the Capricorns is taken out and Antares is injured. And it's this big bang chapter end moment, right? But, like, structurally, it just felt a little weird to me. Like, we did this thing where we were with one character for a really long time, then we switch over to another character, and then we go back to a different character in the first group, but only for like 3 sentences, and then we're done. Like, I liked the moment. It just felt a little. The structure of the chapter felt a little weird to me. And is it just me? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I was trying to find like the Da Vinci Code pattern hidden in, the way the characters are visited and what each of them represents and so forth. And I think maybe it's just really hard to write multiple consecutive
multi-character
interludes from the perspective of weird villains that we've never seen before.
Yeah, sure.
And this was an okay way of ending the chapter, because maybe the Ingenue, outro wouldn't have worked as well.
Well, I mean, what I kind of thought was, what if you did the Ingenue part first and then the Speedrunners part, and then you could end on the continuation of the Speed. I don't know. Like, I don't even know if I like that, because I do like the kind of linear escalation of bad guys as well. So I don't know.
I mean, I don't see, the thing is, I don't actually have a problem with this last snippet. It's just very, very unusual, like in terms of it's already unusual to have multi-character POVs, although it's become less unusual as Ward has progressed. Like
Sure,
we've
sure,
we've
sure.
seen a bunch of different times where that's happened, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's to have such a short POV is interesting. Like again, I'm like I feel like I might be missing something that makes this make more sense. And as it is, I'm not like off put by it. It's just like, yeah, it sort of does strike me as like, I wish I could explain why this is this way.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I liked the moment itself. It's just the moment when, put into the overall puzzle that I
Yeah.
was like, huh.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of a fun idea just that we've captured like secondhand disappears, bang, secondhand reappears.
No, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's cool. I think that's really cool and effective, and we kind of replay the same line that we heard from Secondhand's point of view, except his next 6 hours was slowly trudging through misery, which
Yeah.
for the other character it was just instantaneous.
Yeah. It's also interesting that he's like we've got him, and then the next time we actually see Victoria and Tristan, they're like perfectly, I mean not perfectly right, but they're still holding them off.
Turns out we didn't got him.
Yeah, right. It's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right, moving on to 15.z.
Yes.
Finally, we lodge in Teacher's Dumbhead, and he gives us some color commentary on the percentages that we keep seeing. We see that his life has been pretty stressful lately. Poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy. I like that we open up with those numbers once again, reminding us of this like ominous counter of doom, and we get a little bit more information on what they mean. Not much, but just a little bit more. That if the ceiling got to 100, it would not be a war, a raid, nor a petty rebellion. Which I love that he calls it that. I love that like this massive warden scale attack he calls a petty rebellion. It's perfect. It's great characterization. It would be a cataclysm though. And he also calls the floor number what reality as they understood it was willing to handle, or willing and able to handle. I think that's great little detail too. So we're getting thrown little bits, little crumbs of the full scope of what this means.
Yeah, right. It's and it's left to our imagination what it would actually look like, but it's clear, like the scale of it is clear, right?
Yeah.
Like it's interesting. I mean, it's a fun tool because Wildbow has used this to create a sense of stakes without actually needing us to understand exactly what those stakes are.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you figure it out. It's going to be real bad, folks.
Yeah, I mean, we know enough about the world and about what's going on in it to come to a hypothesis that is enough to buy us into why this is bad without needing to know it all. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have our own mental image of what happens when the floor gets broken or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the most important part of the start of this chapter, though, is that Teacher is coming from somewhere. And this is something that was not readily apparent to me the first time I read it. It didn't become more obvious until I was going through it again. But the chapter opens with the first thing he looked at when he could see the light again was the computer screen with the numbers. It took a moment for his eyes to focus. So yeah, like I said, I didn't pick up on this my first time through, but on a second read through, it becomes pretty clear that the place Teacher was the same place we see him trying to go to at the end of the chapter, this door to the shard world. And it's clear that being there is taking a lot out of him, right? Like comes out covered in sweat. He needs a wet towel. He's losing weight, it says. And later in this part of the chapter, it says he wasn't even there for that long, and it took this much out of him. I think it's a wonderful little bit that if I had picked up on it the first time, I would have been so freaking curious and so hopeful that the chapter would have explained it to me, and very happy that it would have. But I like that as a great way to start.
Yeah. I had I guess we don't know that he has access to this doorway until later. But yeah, I misunderstood what was happening here. In fact, I thought that he was emerging from having been, using that eye power to visit someone different.
I thought so at first too, and it took me going through the text again and seeing that the way he approaches Melody, which is I think the eye power girl, the way he frames using the power, it made it pretty clear that he wasn't like he was just using the power and then he left and now he's going back. It was I'm using the power for the first time in a bit right now. So
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
And also like there's this moment where It says here he couldn't meander. Remaining in the threshold served nothing and no one. So he's like standing in the doorway of this portal, just like he is at the end of the thing, and he can't stay still. And I think that's a fun line for setting up the threshold to the shard world setup that's going to pay off at the end of the chapter. But that's just a good teacher defining thing, right? Like he doesn't feel like he can stay still. He can't stay in the threshold. He's either got to walk through the door or not. And that's kind of explains maybe in his warped mind why the things that he's doing are absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I mean, like the phrasing "served nothing and no one" implies that like the way he kind of thinks about what he does is as a kind of service to others or to concepts like the greater good, perhaps. Like in his narrative, he is pursuing these good ends, right? And in the conversation at the end of the chapter, he's clearly, I don't think he's just full of shit when he's telling them like this is the best outcome. Like I think he believes that actually. Except it puts him on top, right? Like the best outcome for teacher is one where he is on top, like by definition, right? So I don't know, it's complicated.
But I mean, I agree with you, and I think that's why we're in his point of view right now. And I think one of the things that's really fascinating about the story is we've started with these low-level teacher drones in point of views, and then as the chapters have gone on, we've kind of slowly ramped up and we've slowly moved closer and closer to teacher's inner circle, right? Now we are him, we are in his head, and like you would think that the monstrousness would ramp up to him. And I'm not saying teacher's a good guy, but compare his internal monologue with Ingenue's internal monologue, right? They're very distinct. They're very different. Ingenue, as we said, takes pleasure in being evil. I didn't get any of that from teacher here. There's no bits where he's like enjoying being a piece of shit to people, enjoying killing people in this part of the chapter. It's just business to him. It's just the work that needs to be done. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and then we also have to consider, of course, the kinds of people that he's willing to employ and leverage.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which I think maybe like if we are going to be fully literal and say that the characters go from least monstrous to most monstrous, then the idea that just his sort of banal complicity with all of the horrible things that he's doing and his willingness to sacrifice life on this scale while just shrugging off the horror of it as being justified does place him as somewhere between Ingenue and Mama Mathers in terms of monstrousness.
I totally agree with you, and I'm not trying to defend teacher, Jesus, but I just think it's telling that like even Mama Mathers enjoys what she's doing, like enjoys the evil of it. So he's kind of sandwiched between these two people that seem to genuinely enjoy the shitty things that they're doing to each other, and he doesn't feel that way. He's doing terrible things. He's willing to do terrible things, certainly. It's just different.
No, I mean, I think it's really interesting. The way in which it's different is interesting.
Yeah.
So he's very confident that he has Contessa handled despite her having already compromised his communication system. So are we meant to take from this that he's hilariously overconfident or that he's actually kind of right? Because he does actually escape in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a little of both, right? I think he is really confident, but I also think he's wrong. I mean, like, the thing that I love about the ending is that you see this moment of genuine surprise from teacher when Contessa says the choice that she's made. And I think maybe part of that confidence was this understanding in his mind, or this thought in his mind, that she was the same Contessa who participated in all the cauldron choices, that she was the kind of person who would see the best solution as he thinks it is, and just agree with it on some central level, so that while she was being a thorn in his side, eventually she would understand that his way was the right way. Because I think that is the moment we see surprise in him, right? That she's a different person. She's not that person.
Yeah. So I mean, he is overconfident because he loses, but he does survive. So
sure, yeah.
So he learns that apparently Citrine and Kurt were just blown up in a car bomb, and one of them is dead. Dinah is upset. So first of all, I've heard a lot of chatter in the chats and the channels and so forth that people don't believe that Citrine and Kurt were actually in that car. They think maybe it was body doubles or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the evidence for that is Citrine and Number Man were at the raid, right? They said specifically they were going to be participating in the raid, and then when the report is handed down to teacher, they're told they were leaving the office and heading home, and there's some discongruity there, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it is certainly possible that like the way teacher learned about this was through like a news report in which the press released it as they were heading back from their office, right? And they like kind of, so I mean, it is very possible, but I mean that does seem to be some inconsistency there, right? The one thing we do know is that Contessa ordered one of the Number Boys to go tell Citrine to head home immediately. So I don't know. It seems like that is pushing the pieces towards this car bomb will help distract teacher. I
don't know. I don't want to get bogged down in this, but I was like, even if they are participating in the raid, they could probably get out of the building to a car and start heading home pretty quickly, since it's Citrine and Kurt of all people.
Sure,
they can probably move quickly if they need to. So, I mean, for all we know, the entry point they took to get to teacher's base was an office. So like,
right.
I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that that's enough evidence to make me say yes, it absolutely didn't happen. And that starts getting like almost too complicated and confused. And I think the implications of the anti-parahuman group accelerating to actual terrorism is really juicy. And so like part of me wants, just for the sake of the story, that to be where it's going. So maybe I'm just wanting it to be true in that way. I don't know. I'm unconvinced that it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to stop talking about it, because it's one of those things where like we'll just find out what the case is at some point, right? But let's talk about the implications of Dinah for a second.
Yeah, she's been this kind of background character the whole time, right? We know she was doing stuff with the anti-parahuman group. We know she was working with Gary in some way. And now we know that whatever this was, she's pissed off about it. And she's going to go yell at her boy, Gary Nieves. So what's she doing, Matt?
I don't know. It's really interesting to have this. I feel like this is going to come to the forefront at some point.
Yes.
Because we've got Contessa now, and she is in this place where she has made like a complete sea change in how she views her power and how she wants to be using it. Like she's done with using it the way she's been using it up to this point. And she's kind of realized what a monkey's paw it ends up being, whether that's because the shard is malicious or just because reality itself doesn't give you, things that are going to make you happy.
Sure.
I mean, the way she phrases it is like, when you break it down to certainties, everything is just trade-offs between shit that you're willing to accept.
Yeah.
Whereas Dinah, her power, or just the way her power works is different. And so maybe she's trapped in a similar way where she's trying to steer things using her power, but either not quite getting what she wanted, like in a kind of Contessa way where she thinks she's steering things in a good direction, but then becomes increasingly disturbed by the requirements of getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of my first pass.
Well, Contessa's power is proactive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Dinah's power is reactive, because it's like, do something, then see how the percentages change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is two different ways of approaching using these kind of powers to get to the best possible outcome. And I think it is really fascinating. And I agree with you. Seeing how she slots into this whole thing is going to be really, really interesting. Because obviously, for some reason, she believes, or her power is making her believe, that helping along or closely being around this anti-parahuman sentiment is leading to a good outcome. You would have to assume. I don't think Dinah's an evil person, right? So I don't think she's just like actively going like, yeah, fuck these. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think it is really fascinating that we're having kind of Dinah being positioned to move to the forefront at this Contessa moment. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, like regardless, right? This ploy of making it at least seem like the Beaker folks have been killed has its effect because teacher is thinking now he had to choose. He could have that but lose this, or vice versa. For something to be this conveniently inconvenient or inconveniently convenient, suggested Contessa. I just think it's funny because it absolutely is her act.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's I love that phrase. Conveniently inconvenient or inconveniently convenient is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So we make the very unusual jump via a power from teacher's POV into Christine Mathers.
Yeah, I think this whole transition is really wonderful. It is rare in these multiple point of view chapters that I think the transition is this kind of seamless, where he just goes through this power to see through his lieutenants. And I guess like I really liked this chapter. My biggest disappointment with the chapter, if you can call it that, is that this framing device is kind of just dropped after this moment. I thought it would be really cool if it continues throughout it. Like one of the things I really love about the Wild Bow interludes is that they are, as you kind of hinted, like short stories, like these mini stories, and they usually have some sort of like structural element to them that usually carries through from the beginning of the chapter to the end of the chapter. And I felt like that's what we were doing with this. And then so like it feels weird to be like, I'm disappointed this great idea there wasn't more of it is a weird complaint. But I just think like it is such a cool thing to do, and it really felt like it was was going to be done, and it wasn't.
I think that we get spoiled by stuff like Eclipse being a perfect structural palindrome.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, my favorite of the Wild Bow interludes are very tight, right? They have this core central idea to them, and the chapter is built around that core central idea. And I love everything in this chapter, right? I think it's all fantastic. Like when you're in it, it's wonderful. It's working on me. But yeah, if I'm looking at this from a 500-foot level, I'm just like, oh, I wish it was like those other fantastic interludes. Instead, it's just a great interlude.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I agree to the extent that when you see one device being used to transition between characters, and then there aren't any other devices used to transition between characters, it sticks out.
And there's a moment after the Mathers section where we jump back to teacher for a couple paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was setting up that, right? Like I really felt like at that moment, like, okay, we're back in teacher, and now he's going to go to the next one and the next one, right? So I mean, it just felt like that's what the book was doing. So it was just a little like, huh?
Yeah.
You know. Again,
yeah,
I think the elements of the chapter, great.
Yeah.
It's just the structural stuff.
I don't normally like to make guesses of this nature, but like maybe that was the original plan with the chapter, and then Wild Bow decided that didn't really work.
I am confident enough to say, yeah, it was something like that, because it just seems, like it just really does seem like it. Mm-hmm. That's a total guess, but yeah.
Cool. All right. So as
on
we
to
join,
Mama. Let's do this great, amazing section.
Yes, lovely Christine. She thinks to herself about how she's using her power on hundreds of thousands of people on Earthsea, subtly making religion seem more appealing and not religion seem less appealing. Really a very cool application of her power, actually, and I think scary in a whole different way from the more overt and like immediate combat uses that we tend to see. I think she's this classic example of a cape who would have taken over the world if not for her personality flaws.
I think you're right, because I'd never thought of how insidious and sneaky her power could be like this until this chapter, because we had mostly seen Mama Mathers act and influence people who knew what her power was and understood what was happening, right? It's like, oh, there's a scary Mama Mathers in front of me, like making evil, scary stuff. That's awful. And I know it's fake, but it feels real. But yeah, these are like 250,000 people who have no idea who she is, have no idea what her power is, and have no idea that they're under her sway. And she can just do these little things that just push them in one direction or another. And it's awful. Like, it's awful in like a way that it would be super effective if
Yeah.
used on a global scale.
Right. And it's an almost, I mean, Queen Administrator level multitasking type thing where it's not like my understanding of her power is she's not having to pay attention to 300,000 people. She's got kind of a proxy Christine Mathers living in their head almost.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of reporting some stuff back to her, but generally that person is being like tended to by like a little figment of her,
Yeah.
which is just horrifying and like you said, very, very powerful.
Yeah. And she's super racist too. Let's not forget about that.
Oh yeah.
The part where she's like, yeah, and then we'll make all the brown and black people, kneel down before the whites.
Yeah.
I was like, God, you were terrible enough as it is. Now you're just going to throw racism into it just for funsies?
But first things first.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an interesting, we've talked about religion a lot. I mean, the book has, and so we obviously, but this idea that like for her, like it's like nothing in her mind has anything to do with Christian doctrine, right? It's just whatever she like her fucked up worldview, and the tool that she's going to use to spread it is Christianity, her form of Christianity, which is really just like worshiping her. Like it's a very interesting kind of double think, because I don't think that in her own mind she's like, I'm going to make them worship me. She's like, I'm going to make them worship God.
And Jesus specifically.
And
I mean,
Jesus.
That's like, it is definitely Christianity, because she says like, if you're worshiping God but not mentioning Jesus enough in your sermons, I'm going to punish you. And that is, I mean, it is really specific to that. But like any other denominations, any other belief systems that don't line up with her, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to make them look terrible. It is specific to Christianity, but it is not Christianity in any way, shape, or form. Like, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And she clearly does want to be worshipped ultimately. Like I mean, we talked, I think even a long time ago when her power was first introduced, we talked about the idea that this is like a child's conception of God. It's always watching you, judging you, personally, and punishing you for not listening. Yeah. So anyway, she finds that she can use her power on Chevalier in a deeper way, because his kind of powers sight that he has gives her an avenue with which to flood him with memories of her life. And from this, we learn that Elijah triggered as a child, as an infant maybe, and that she herself is actually a cauldron cape.
Yeah, so I mean, this whole Chevalier part, I think, is just one of those wild bow wrinkles on powers that like I never would have thought of in a million years, but as soon as it's told to you, it makes perfect sense. Like, her power works through the senses. Chevalier has a sixth sense. So of course the power is going to work through that sense as well, right? Like it makes perfect sense when you lay it out like that, but I never would have thought of that. And I don't even know if like he had that central idea when he came up with it, or if it's just like, okay, I got these two characters in a room and oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that's
right?
Interesting. I like that. Yeah. I mean, I do kind of feel like stuff like what happens in a little bit with Love Lost is something where it just maybe pop, it's something that pops out of the setting, right? It wasn't necessarily thought up ahead of time. Maybe it was, I don't know. So she doesn't actually know if Valeford died, and she doesn't seem too terribly concerned. Somewhat concerned, a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I find this fascinating, right? Because in this moment we learn that she's a cauldron cape. The reason she's a cauldron cape is because her son triggered as a baby, and she kind of was desperate for help. She's desperate for help with him
getting a handle on it.
Yeah, and so she goes to Cauldron. But then we see this same woman who was like who was like willing to promise favors to Cauldron and incur this debt to be able to be with her son and hold her son, like abandons her son during that battle, right? With that, very specifically, she just says, "Oh, looks like we're gonna lose. Bye."
Yeah,
and she just takes off. And yeah, here she's curious about if he's still alive, but it's not like forefront in her mind. It's just like a random kind of curiosity. And there's seemingly a disconnect there, right? Like she cared enough about him. What happened? Has she just gone totally insane? And thinking about this, well, the reason, Matt, is because Mama Mathers has almost 300,000 children now, right? Like, she has a bond with each and every one of these people that have seen her that is, I mean, there's a reason why she calls herself Mama Mathers, right? Like, this bond with every single one of these people allows her to maintain this kind of paternal watch over them. She's like the world's worst helicopter parent to every single person that is in contact with her. So the idea of losing one of her children is not as impactful to her when she's got a whole bunch of them.
It's horrifying.
Right?
Yeah, like I'm immediately like, yeah, I guess she'll have to find someone else to give her the sponge baths, and I'm sure she will.
Yeah.
Yeah. God. Also, as she's kind of tormenting Chevalier, we learned that everybody wants to fuck Chevy.
I mean, don't you? Like, what a fucking guy. Like, even in this like, we've seen him in the last book, like, getting his ass kicked and, like, you know, slowly walking up to Behemoth despite the fact that he's literally dying. And in this moment, she's throwing everything she has at him, every bit of manipulation. She's got almost every single one of his senses under her control, and he's resistant to the last, right?
Yeah.
Like, she says, taste me, and he goes, oh yeah, I'll fucking just bite. I'm gonna bite you. He is resistant to everything she can throw at him till the very end, and it is, God, he's a fucking badass. I love Chevalier. Awesome.
Yeah, pretty awesome. So yeah, like we mentioned, she manages to fuck up Love Lost just through her emotion sensing power.
Mm-hmm.
She almost snipes Love Lost using one of her subordinates' powers, but Love Lost is bailed out by Rain, I think. And then, you know, the room that they're in and possibly the surrounding structure begins to collapse. Mama responds by giving everyone a vision of their side losing horribly. And it seems like it's about to come true until Rain actually does show up. And then his presence makes her so mad that she changes her focus to being more about taking him down specifically. Interestingly, she casts him as the vision of this, as the villain of this scene, turning all the good capes against him.
Yeah. I want to talk about this for a bit, and we try not to, like, get into the community conversations about stuff, right? But there is one thing that I did want to talk about here a bit, because one of the critiques of this chapter I saw is that people really thought it would be much more fitting and much more important for us to see Rain's fight with Mama Mathers, right? To see this final conflict. This is the guy versus the woman that is heavily responsible for a lot of the bad shit that happened to him. And they wanted to see more of this conflict. They wanted to see it to its fruition. And that's one of the critiques of this chapter that I just don't agree with at all, because I think there's everything here that we need there to be. I honestly do, because there's this moment right here where she sees Rain, and he's not hers anymore. He is like, and of course he's not hers because of his new family, because of the tech that Kenzie has given him that is allowing him to look at her and hear her without being affected by her. But that's because he's found a new family. He's found a new group to belong to, and he's not part of the Mathers family anymore. And that is made abundantly clear here, to where the only option she has in this moment is to build a false image of who he is and use that false image to get other people to attack him. And it's a good line, like this thing she thinks to herself: you walk up to them as if they're your allies, that you have their back and they have yours, but you're alone, child. You will always be alone unless you're with me. And it's like a good line. It's like a badass line, but it rang so hollow to me in the moment. It's bullshit. Like, it's total bullshit. Rain isn't alone. We know that he isn't alone because we know who his new family is. And these people that are turning on him in this moment are not turning on him because they still believe he's that old person. They're doing it because she's forcing the image of that person to be here, an image of him that is not him. She has to create that image because it's not here anymore. And I'm not saying that Rain's not going to struggle with his past. Like, that is going to be something he's going to be struggling with for the rest of his life. It's part of life. But he's not that person anymore. And this threat of hers just rang so hollow to me, and I think it's supposed to. I think everything in this interaction that needs to be there is there, and the actual like kicky, punchy, fighty part, I don't think is necessary. I don't think we're going to learn anything more about Rain's character in the rest of this fight.
Yeah, I mean, we already saw him kill Valefor, which was, first of all, not played as a badass hero moment because he hated that he had to do that, and he asked permission to do it first, right?
Yeah.
Like as much as we kind of are glad Valefor is dead, it was not a moment where you're like, yeah, fuck Valefor. It was like, I mean, I can't help but remember that, like, hey, this is the guy who like brainwashed himself like to get out of the suffering that he was going through. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, he sucks totally, but like he sucks because of powers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just don't see what it would have. I agree completely. I don't see what it would have added if we just had like another paragraph where it was like, and then Rain totally cut her in half with his blade.
Yeah.
And she was dead, and it was totally sweet. Like,
yeah, to me, the conflict is resolved when he stands there, looks right at her. She calls out to him. He doesn't react, and she recognizes he's not mine anymore. That is Rain's victory moment. That is conflict overcome.
Yeah. I didn't see this until just now, but we have the language of Valefor, her, Elijah looked up at her with eyes that flashed. And here we have Rain jumping up out of the ground with glowing eyes that she can't penetrate.
Yep.
Just kind of a cool visual motif.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. There's cool. Nothing you could do, Mama.
Yep.
Suck it.
Yep. Nothing. You can't get help on this one. And then we switch into maybe the worst POV yet.
Oh boy.
Hard to say, really, which is saying something. But Spawner is just a real piece of work, isn't he? He's all the worst parts of Crawler and Breed stitched into a physical powerhouse, regenerator, and a master of little slicey bugs.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, we're talking about worst. I think bugs coming out of his urethra is the worst thing that I've ever thought about. But yeah, it is interesting that, like, point of view wise, I don't know if he's like more monstrous than Mama Mathers, but he's
more physically monstrous, for sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So Ashley tries to verbally provoke him, but her read on him isn't quite right because Spawner is cautious due basically to the breed aspects. And his power is fucking awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say like she reads him wrong. Just that the dude's got two personalities up in that brain bug, that bug brain bug, and is kind of able to exist in the space between them, right? So the taunts would have worked on half of him. It's just it doesn't work on the other half, and that's really not fair. Stop.
Yeah.
It's not her fault, Matt. Stop blaming Ashley for anything.
No, well, I think ultimately, like, all of her taunting does build up.
Yes.
And make him angry enough that he does kind of become aggressive, right? So it doesn't work in this moment, but the fact that she's doing it, I think, kind of accumulates, and it ends up working, is how I would view it. And, I don't think I have the heart to give a blow-by-blow of this fight.
Mm-mm.
I mean, let's just, overview. Ashley's getting just physically torn apart, literally torn apart by successive attacks from Spawner. She fails to hold them off because her power is still disrupted by Ingenue, but she never gives up. She never even seems to hesitate. She pushes verbally and pushes the attack. And then when somebody helps her, she's more concerned at potentially hurting an ally than about herself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull out a few things. So one of them is, I think, a really cool technique, which I'm going to just label inviting ambiguity. And I'm going to quote this text here. A cape grabbed Swansong's arm to help her get back from the spreading tide, and she flinched, her power sparking, her empty white eyes and eyebrows suggesting fear. Fear that she might destroy the person saving her, or fear because she was as vulnerable as she had been since Bonesaw had lopped off her hands. So here, Wildbow's not telling us which it is. He's posing the question to us through a character and inviting us to figure it out. So the question, is it fear for the other cape or fear for herself? But I think there's a right answer. I think we're meant to know. Ashley's not thinking about Bonesaw here. She's not thinking about fear for herself here.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And like we said last week, I think Ashley sensed that her end was coming, one way or another, and survival is not something she's really worried about at this point. She's worried and I think what happens next, the fact that, she gets her power control back, but then loses her own protection of it and doesn't hesitate at all, confirms this, right?
Yeah.
She's worried about finishing the mission, getting the vials where they need to go, not hurting the people around her. I think this also echoes the moment we saw from the WASP commander point of view last week, where there was a brief moment where she had concern for herself, but then WASP commander notes that the concern shifts from being concerned with herself to being concerned about Sveta. That concern shifted. And I think that it's a continuation of that here. The fear is not for herself, it's for others.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's extremely beautiful. Harkens all the way back to the first stuff we know about her character.
Yep.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So yeah, like you said, Ingenue takes her immunity to her own power, and then she starts to destroy her own body as she continues to fight.
Yeah, I think this is so important and so wonderful to this entire death scene, because Spawner and Ingenue see this as like a brilliant move, right? Like it's a devilish trade-off. It's like, okay, we'll give you your control back, but you lose your own protection. You have control again, but every use of it will annihilate little bits of yourself. So now what do you do? Huh? Now what do you do? And I think for most people, the answer would be hard to come by. It's like, oh God, I got to limit my use of my power. I gotta be careful about this. I can't destroy myself. Not Ashley, right? Ashley's never really had a lot of concern about her dying. She values control more than that, right? So what Ingenue has actually done is just played exactly into how Ashley values herself. And so she doesn't hesitate. She doesn't hold back. She recognizes the consequences of her using her power almost immediately, and it doesn't change a damn thing.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful that she's not she's not full of it when she says like, "Oh, you fool, you've given me back my control," because it is, she's literally like, yeah, I mean, this is what I need. I need control. I don't care if it's self-destructive right now.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
So here, I think we've all been wondering when Gru would show up. We knew he would. But I think what's actually cool is that he only really shows up here as a presence that assists Ashley almost by accident, like almost just in the course of keeping Valkyrie hidden. I think he just happens to be helping Ashley. And I think it's a cool moment because like it's not Neo O'Brien stealing the show. It's just a background element that gives you a little fist pump in the middle of this intense fight.
I completely agree, and I'm so glad we don't actually see him here. Mm-hmm. This is not Gru's moment to come back into the story. This is Ashley's moment. She's earned this moment. This is hers. Mm-hmm. And so all Gru is doing here is being like a roadie for Swansong's final concert performance, right? He's handling the fog machine. and the thing I love about this is it's such a wonderful fog machine too, because darkness is Ashley's aesthetic, right? And so in the final moments of her life, in the last final moments where she's making a final statement of who she is and what she is, she's shrouded in darkness. She's hiding in it. She's leaping out of it. She's eventually ascending above it, climbing above the darkness as a figure from her past leaps up to pull her back down and is blown away. It's aesthetically perfect. Thanks, Gru.
Yeah, my God. Yeah, the things, Jesus Christ, I didn't even put that connection together. But yeah, the things reaching up from below to bring you back down, and she set it all up. How did she set it up?
Yeah.
Using her friends,
yep.
Using her connections to other people. So yeah, let's do that part now.
Okay.
So while holding off two other handpicked ingenue capes, Ashley uses Chekhov's arm spike to stab the other bonesaw creation through the throat. He counters by putting a monster into her abdomen, and then she escapes into the darkness, next emerging to climb a ladder using one hand and the crook of an elbow, her legs useless. And as Spawner watches this just horrible sight, he thinks, was this Bonesaw's work? he had never been injured enough to activate any Berserker protocol or some innate programming that had been implanted with memories. But her forward progress was single-minded, laborious, and marked with wheezing breaths. She went after Ingenue. It's not Berserker protocol, dude. It's just Ashley.
Yep, it's just Ashley, and that's what I love about it. Is this death scene is quintessentially Ashley, and it's everything about Ashley we've been talking about this entire time. It's is it damsel? Is it swan song? Is it both? Is it neither? Something else? It's all of it. It's all of it.
Yeah. So Nedley tries to ambush her, but she has placed one of Kenzie's Tinker eyes in a location to get a perspective on the fight and to set a trap. I mean, I'm making some inferences here, but I'm pretty sure that was the gist of it.
Yes.
She sees him coming and she blows him away, leaving just enough of him to perceive the rest of the fight. And then she collapses, and she's assisted in completing her mission by Clockblocker, Kidwin, and probably Brian. And as one of her final acts, she asks them not to let Valkyrie have her.
Yeah. And that's when Ashley dies. And it's not just that she dies, right? Because we're all going to die. And as we've been saying, I think Ashley expected that she was going to die here. But it's how she dies that matters. Because in her final words here are, I thought I'd go out screaming and ranting, sick and hating myself for it. I did. Every other time except the first. And then she's asked, you said you had a friend? She nodded. Glad it was me. Means there's less chance it's her. I can handle this. Been here enough times. Every other time, that's how she went out. Every other time, screaming and ranting, hating herself. But not this time. This time, she's got a friend. And this time, the monster she vanquishes looks right at her, and what does he see? Her eyes. The one thing we've seen throughout the entire of Ashley's arc has been a focus on her eyes. And he sees one was white from corner to corner, the edges smoking black. The other was ordinary. One eye, white pupils smoking black. The other, normal. So who is Ashley? She's all of those things, right? She's the Ashley who tried to protect her mother from an abusive man and accidentally killed her. She's the Ashley that killed a man she loved because of presumed betrayal. She's the Ashley who joined the Slaughterhouse Nine and who was ultimately destroyed by them. But she's also the Ashley who befriended a little kid and no one else was giving a shot. An Ashley who chose hands over claws. An Ashley who stayed a hero well beyond when it was just working out. An Ashley who protected her friends, who hesitated before blowing away Ingenue because she didn't want to be like that person anymore. An Ashley who completed the mission, who leapt out of darkness even though her legs didn't work because she refused to stop fighting. She is what she was, but also what she ascended to be, both literally and figuratively. And she died not hating herself. And in this story, where we're talking about the spectrums of death, death is not one thing. Death is a lot of things. And how you die matters. And so to take the pin out of our conversation before, it matters that she died being a person that would hesitate before killing people, a person that didn't want to be that person anymore. That matters. And like, there's not a much better death than that, right? Like,
yeah.
that is the death that like, we're all gonna die. Hopefully we'll die being the person that we struggled to be and often failed at being, but ultimately achieved. Like,
yeah.
I hope that's the way I die, and that's the way she dies. And like, it's tragic and it's sad, but there's a moment of peace there too, right? Because she has to take pills constantly to be a person that can survive in the world without losing it, right? It's a constant struggle. We go back to her interludes. It's a constant struggle for her, constantly. That's a rough existence, right? It's a hard life. And maybe now she gets to be at peace. And knowing she goes out as the person she wanted to be, the person who doesn't hate herself. Man, like, it's sad, but what else can you want? What else can you want?
Yeah, I mean, I like you've kind of covered both ends of a spectrum that I was having trouble squaring, because when I first read the chapter, I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first like thing that I wrote because I was gonna write something like that was really badass, and I was like, that's just such a reductive way of framing the way that death was executed narratively. Like, yeah, it was badass, but that's such a inadequate way of posing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's also not. I also wouldn't call it tragic. Like it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like it was a great like crowning moment of like you said, ascendancy, right? She ascended and transcended the things that she has been struggling against,
Yeah.
and for a really great cause, and it was great. So there's a lot of complexity to it. Yes, it was badass and cool, and I don't know if I'm over it enough to call it fun. But it was more about the fact that this is a culmination of everything that we've kind of been told about this character, everything we understand about who she is.
Yeah.
Um,
I was sad, but I was satisfied.
yeah,
And I think Ashley is too, right? I think
yeah,
she dies, and don't Valkyrie me. Don't try to save me. Like, look,
yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Right. And I mean, to talk about the spectrum of death again, like all that would happen if Valkyrie got her would be, she wouldn't just be spared death. She would still die. She would just be pulled back up the spectrum and be someone else, right?
Yeah, true.
Like we don't, I mean, we don't really know what it's like to be a thrall, but I don't think you can go down that gradient and then come back up without being different. Like Furcate says, death necessitates change. I don't think Furcate is the same Furcate that we knew, you know?
Yeah. I think
So
that's made textual with Sarah, right? I mean, I think
yeah,
that's kind of the role she serves in this story.
yeah,
Is show that is indeed very true.
yeah. So I don't think her choosing not to be taken by Valkyrie is like a kind of suicide.
No.
I think that she has the correct understanding that being taken by Valkyrie does not spare you death. It merely inducts you into a twisted kind of transformation, which you
Yeah.
might not actually want.
Yeah. I mean, she said throughout the story that she'd conquered death, right?
Hmm.
Well, isn't the greatest conquering of death living a life worth living? Like,
Hmm.
I think there's something so wonderful and poetic about that. And she used this moment, she used this second chance, quote unquote, to live a good life. And she lived it her way. That's the beautiful thing. Like, she never stopped being Ashley. She never stopped being this person. She's still the person that's going to talk big and give people shit for their performance and care about the kind of aesthetic stuff and kind of wax villainy in some ways. Like, she's still that person, but she made better choices. And I don't know how else you conquer death than that.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah. Ultimately, what I ended up saying in the Discord was, I'm sad that it had to happen, but if it had to happen, then I'm glad this is the way it happened.
I agree. I
I
agree.
think that's still how I feel about it.
It's a happy ending for Ashley. It is. I really think it is.
Hmm.
And I know it's going to be really hard on her friends. Kenzie is not going to react to this very well at all. Victoria is probably going to take it pretty hard too. And they've got some struggles ahead of them. But I think the struggle is over for Ashley, and I'm happy for her.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm quite emotionally there yet, but I see where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, that was that. And then we cut again to a hero POV, to Tristan this time.
Can we talk a little bit before we move on about the choices to go with the other POVs? Because what we've done here in this story is we've seen two extremely important events for two of our characters, Byron and Ashley, from the perspective of random dudes that
Mhm.
have no real emotional attachment to them. And that was a choice, right? Like, Wildbow chose to make the climax of this arc told from different perspectives. We didn't stay with Victoria. We didn't we do hop to members of Breakthrough, but rarely. Like there's only 2 times, and they're at the tail end of 2 of these interludes.
Mm-hmm.
And so my immediate question with that is, well, why we do that, right? Because there's a reason. There's always a reason. And I wanted to kind of work through this reason with you, because I think I stumbled upon, what it is. And I think it's a fascinating choice to me.
Yeah, I think you were the one who cracked most of it. So you go ahead and lay it out.
Yeah. So we have this moment where the last moment we're with Victoria in this arc is the moment in which they realize that they've fully committed now to Path C. All the characters are together for the last time, and then they split up. And then we leave the perspective. And I think it's fascinating because like I kind of hinted at with Secondhand earlier in the show, seeing this from the perspective of a third party kind of sort of rips agency away from our main characters, right? Because we're not in their head. We're not seeing their choices. We're not understanding the things they're going through. We're seeing it from an outside observer. And I think this is so important because what we've done here is we've basically echoed what's going on with them, which is that they're just following instructions now. They're not making choices. They're following a path that's been laid out for them by Contessa. They aren't in control anymore, really. And I think that the decision to pull away from Victoria, to remove agency of the situation from her, literally by ripping us away from her point of view, to me really sells this central idea that by following the enemies, our main characters temporarily, through the existence of Contessa, have lost their agency.
Yeah. And I think to underscore this and to really, I think, indicate that this is, the right track, the only times we return to our character point of views are we return to Sveta after she has essentially completed her mission as designed by Contessa. She has gotten into teacher's communication system, or she has allowed Kenzie to do it rather, and kind of her part of the mission is done. Then Tristan, we only catch up with Tristan a few seconds really before the canary music starts playing. So their part of their job is done. Everyone's done with their part of Plan C before we get back with them. Meaning you're done. You can have your agency back. And I think that's exactly what's happening. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, because, I mean, the important part for these characters is not the individual choices made during the fighting, because that's been laid out for them. The important part now is their reaction to it. The hard part is going to be those choices were made, we acted according to them, and now we have to live with the consequences of those choices. So we return to Sveta in the consequences of what happened. We return to Tristan in the consequences of what happened. We don't get to see them during it. We see them after. You're absolutely right. I don't like, this one of those things where I'm like, was that what he was trying to do? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think regardless, it works for me. And there's a lot of people it didn't work for, and I get that. I do think that the Ashley death is just as emotionally satisfying no matter which point of view we were at. I think one of the things I do like about the point of view that we did get it through is that his internal monologue like backs off to allow the scene to play out in a way it should. Like we're not getting what's his name? I just forgot it. Spawner, thank you. We're not getting Spawner's like really inside perspective on Ashley's death as she dies, right? Like the scene is allowed to play out without him really commenting on it narratively. And some people might say that's the point of view character backing off, and that's not good, but I think it's important in that moment to just let the scene play out the way it does. I think it works. I think it works in every way that I feel like the book wanted it to.
I mean, I think it's the most kind of elegant, understated major character death in a Wildbow work. So
I agree. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of people have died in these books. None of them affected me like this one did.
Yeah, I think that's true. Because Taylor's alive.
Sure, Matt.
Yeah. So the team gradually reunites. Sveta horribly injured. The Undersiders reeling from having lost Samuel. Byron obviously put away in stasis. Everyone, yeah.
And I mean, like the cool thing about this is we're in Tristan's head now, but Tristan's point of view is very kind of reserved as well. and I think the thing that happens here is shell shock, right? I mean, he is completely like kind of like not even there. He's worried about his brother. They get to hear the news about Ashley through a devastated Kenzie. And he doesn't know, right? Like he thinks like it must be terrifying. He doesn't know what's the status of his brother, and he can't really check, right? Like
Right.
you can't. Oh, if I switch and he's unconscious, fuck. So
Yeah.
like, or he's dead, and it doesn't. And what happens? He doesn't know. So it's just like this unknown, and it's kind of completely like stripping any kind of like normal like personality we might see. It's just kind of this cold, shell shocked point of view.
Yeah, right. And I mean, yeah, and it plays off of his worst moments in his life,
Yeah.
where he did this on purpose,
Right.
the last time.
Yeah, and I think that's what, like, as soon as I realized that it was Byron that got hurt, I was like, of course. Like, you look back at everything we've been doing this arc, everything with his interaction with his mother, his interaction with Furcate, like these people that have not forgiven him for the thing he did, and now look, it's happening again. Only this time, it might actually be the way that he lied about it being last time, right?
Yeah. Right. And this coming after Byron was like the only person around who was kind of giving him a shoulder to lean on, obviously metaphorically, because he can't actually do that physically, because that's just even worse that way.
Yeah.
But now even that is taken away.
Yeah.
So poor Tristan.
Yeah, poor Tristan. It's gonna be rough for these Capricorn boys.
Yep. So I realized something very, very belatedly, and maybe I'm just like realizing it again. But anyway, the point is that the text is still at this point going out of its way to make it ambiguous who is going to be the other death. I don't think it's Byron. I personally think it's Tristan, because if Tristan dies, then Byron suffers for a super long time. I don't want that to be the case, because I'll be sad.
Yeah.
I'll be very, very sad. It could obviously be Sveta, because she's badly injured and the Harbingers want to kill her. Could be Kenzie, because the book keeps telling us that she's a target. Could be Rain, because also Kenzie was instrumental in beating teachers, so maybe somebody has it out for her. Could be Rain, because Love Lost is kind of hanging over his shoulder still, that the text has gone out of its way to remind us like that is not resolved just because Love Lost is on their side.
Yeah.
Could even be Victoria. I mean, that would be surprising, but could be. But the point is, this is a big thing hanging over us, still hanging over us. The fight is done, right? I mean, we know now that the arc is done, actually, but we still have one more breakthrough member who's going to bite it, right? I mean, am I misinterpreting something?
No, I mean, there is that ambiguity about how she described the death of the two breakthrough people. But I agree with you. I think the book is leaving this a little open-ended for us, and I think, you know, your chocolate Byron nature is coming back again, where like the book is kind of telling us, oh, it's Byron, and you're like, I don't know. I don't know. But no, I agree that there is wiggle room here, and I don't think I think the text seems to be pointing towards here's our two. We said two, maybe three. Ashley's dead. Byron's injured. There they are. Boom. There could be one more.
I'm like sure it's not gonna be Byron, but that's
sure,
what I get for
huh?
yeah. I'm it's the only time I've made a prediction where I didn't hedge it with like 100 different things. It's not gonna be Byron.
I would not be surprised if you are correct. The text seems to be pushing us that way in a way that it could be manipulating us.
I stake my reputation as a predictor.
Okay.
Which I don't have a reputation, so that's fine. Yeah. So as they are approaching teachers, I guess, hideout location, Victoria picks up a bunch of tinker guns. I wasn't sure what to make of this. I just kind of was like, yeah, okay. She's picking stuff up. She's done that a few times recently. I kind of glossed over it, and people started theory crafting about it, and I was like, I don't know about that. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk about this, right? And I was a little surprised too. Like, I didn't really see it as anything like too crazy. Like, I think Victoria is being driven to escalation through severe grief. She's exhausted and she's mourning and she's so fucking done with this shit So she just picks up a bunch of fucking guns and it's gonna go fucking kill this fucking son of a bitch. And in this moment, like, the wretch is listening to her for the most part, again, right? Like, the wretch is holding some of these guns. It's not chucking or smashing, but it's holding them. And I think this is not like a sudden new thing. This has been something that the text has been setting up throughout the arc, that she's been asking the wretch for things, and the wretch has been more or less complying with her throughout the arc. So I think this is like just the cap on that central idea. And I don't think this is some like new power she's gained now. I just think this is in the moment where Victoria is kicking people's heads off and smashing through things and picking up guns and wanting to kill people because she's grieving and angry. The wretch is like, oh, fuck yeah, let's do this thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically my read as well. Like, yeah, I mean, you get a little power boost when you give in to your violence, and and she just lost a friend, and she's pretty sure of it, and so she's in a very bad place. I mean, maybe you could stretch it and say a place closer to a trigger event, which would mean her power would be stronger. I don't know if I would actually go that far, but yeah, it didn't strike me as being super weird anyway.
Yeah.
So they find Teacher standing before his gateway into the Phantom Zone. For a second, we think that Contessa has actually maneuvered everyone into handing the Teacher the victory. But then she tells him no, she's done with utilitarianism.
I love this so much. Like, throughout, ever since Contessa came back in the story, we've had this kind of open question of, why is she doing this? Should we take her at face value? Should we trust her? Is she just scheming? And I think in this moment we kind of see that, no, she's not. Path to Victory is telling her that Teacher's way is the best way for humanity. Or as she says, so close to the best that it's indistinguishable. But the Contessa of Ward is not the Contessa of Worm. She's learned something. And perhaps that thing she learned came from our best girl, Taylor, back in that conversation she had with her, right when she shot her and definitely didn't kill her. And like we said earlier, in this moment, Teacher is surprised. Teacher's face fell a fraction. What? I gave them the best options they would be happiest with. I picked one. I'm done with getting the objective best with the ugliest path to get there. And I think you zoomed in on that sentence a lot, so I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, especially the word, the phrase "ugliest path to get there." Like,
yeah.
I feel like this is me like admitting up front, like, I think I'm reading too much into this, but I think there's a possibility that Contessa in this moment is like viewing her power as like a literal monkey's paw, where she's like, every time I ask for a path, if there's a way to kick a child on the way to accomplishing my goal, my power will give me a way of making sure I kick the child.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of the truth. Like it gave them Case-53s on the way to building their army.
Yeah.
Every time she uses it in a combat context, she just like fucks everybody up in just the most stylish way possible, right? It's not. I wouldn't actually call it efficient. It does just seem to go out of its way to cause collateral damage, and I might be wrong about that, but maybe it's true, and maybe she has seen that, and she's like, I'm gonna take my hand off the rudder, and I'm gonna give other people the chance to pick their goals, and we're not going to go this path where it's just like again, the ugliest path to getting there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I spent the last 7 days chatting with people in our Discord a lot about Path to Victory, about, really examining how this power works, what it does, the inherent limitations of it and the inherent strengths of it, just because we were, arguing back and forth about different implications of it. And I mean, the one thing you kind of settle on is this idea that victory is defined by the user, right? Like, path to victory is not path to the best thing. It's path to the thing that the user defines. Right. And so, there's this idea that the objective best, right? Like, she is turning away from what the objective best outcome is. The book through Contessa is basically telling us that Teacher's way might be the quote unquote objective best way for humanity. That what he's going to do in the long term of existence of humanity is going to be the best thing for us. But that's a relative definition, right? Like it's based on a lot of different things, and it's based on how we define the path to get there. Like I used like GPS as an example, right? Like if I want to go to work and I use a GPS and I say, here's my endpoint is work, take me there. GPS is going to route me the fastest way there. But if I don't put in avoid tolls, if I don't put in avoid traffic, like it's just going to go, we'll just go this way. And so if you don't put in those clarifications, or you're not specific enough, or you don't encapsulate every single clarifying factor, it's just going to go the way that it thinks is the best way.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's she doesn't say the word utilitarian in here, but it strikes me that it has to mean something like utilitarian. Like if you're going to use the word optimal, like optimal or objective best or whatever implies something like utilitarian framework or consequentialist framework at least, where you're ranking outcomes by some like criteria of some pseudo quantitative criteria. And the thing about pseudo quantitative criteria is that you can sweep a lot of stuff under the rug. I mean, a lot of the worst things in history have been done with the justification of the greater good, right? With different people drawing different lines of saying, when we say the greater good, we mean the greater good for these people over here, and we're gonna pretend that this type of horrible thing that we're doing over here doesn't count against our ledger. And it has some pretty horrific consequences. And I don't know. I see it as growth that I think I was more ambivalent earlier in this arc, but I've kind of come around to being like, yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, I think our last conversation, I talked a lot about the idea that like, why doesn't she just use Path to Victory to bootstrap to get the answer that she would think of if she had infinite time to think about it? And maybe that would work. But like that to me, I do kind of see that as being like a route down the pathway that leads to madness, and terrible consequences.
Yeah, I get that.
Or maybe objectively the best consequences, but terrible paths. So it's very interesting. Like I'm even more confused than ever, and it delights me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's how I'm gonna wrap it all together in a nice little bow for you.
Okay.
How do you define victory? Because I define Ashley Swansong dying as a person who doesn't hate herself as victorious.
Mm-hmm.
And would a Path to Victory define it that way, right? Like
yeah, I don't know.
It's there are so many different things. When you say I want this person to die, or I want this person to live, or I like. There's worse than death, and death is a spectrum, just like you've been talking about. Like there's different ways to die. Do you want to die? Are you going to die a monster, or are you going to die a person who did the right thing when it counted?
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, how many Cinta deaths is Sveta's lifetime of suffering worth?
Exactly. And I mean, like if we want to get like spiritual, we don't have to, but if you want to get spiritual, if there's an existence beyond death, if there's an afterlife of some sort, I don't freaking know, but does it matter what you do in your life? Does it matter how you live that life? I don't know.
I'm sure we'll find out next week.
I'm sure the books. I mean, these are just things that I think that some of this stuff has failed to take into account. And I think what Contessa is doing here is she's kind of realized that. She's realized that how we define these things matters. And what they've done here, kind of, Matt, is they've chosen the not best option. So, like, shit's going to be hard. Like, the teacher basically says, there will be moments in the future where you wish you sided with me, where you regret. If you kill me here, you'll regret it. If you stop me, you'll regret it. And that could be true, right? Like that could still be true, even though it's not the best path, but it's not the ugliest path either.
Yeah, I mean, you could very well regret it if you let him go, and also regret it if you don't let him go.
Yeah.
Like there could be no out.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
totally possible.
Yeah.
So if Shards are the readers, is Contessa the author grappling with what constitutes goodness and rightness? I
Sure.
don't know. It's interesting.
That gets. I'd have to take some time and really parse that. I can't give you an off the cuff reaction.
Just gonna drop that on you and then move on.
I am intrigued.
Yeah. So they arrest Teacher, and as Contessa predicted, he is bailed out by a sleeper agent. Legend is brought along for the ride. And so, this is one of what we can assume are many fallback plans, and Teacher is gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's one moment in here we have to talk about, though, where Teacher is about to step through the doorway, and Contessa says, "I wouldn't do that." And then she looks at Breakthrough, and Teacher looks at Breakthrough, and then he goes, "Yeah, okay." And this is the big moment that the chapter kind of leaves us with, right? This is the big mystery. Like we know in the future they've chosen the not the optimal, objectively best path. They've chosen the path that isn't quite as ugly. So things are going to get bad. Things are going to collapse. I think Teacher's right that a lot of the systems of Earth Gimel are going to start collapsing, and they're going to have to do work. But the big mystery is, what the hell did he see in Breakthrough that made him change his mind?
Yeah, so I've seen people say, and this seems rather simple and likely true, just that maybe he looked at their expressions and was like, "Oh, they're just going to follow me through and kill me."
Yeah, that's almost too simple. I want it to be a little bit more than that.
I want it to be my head went to oh, he maybe he looks at Rain, that reminds him of the dream room or something, or he looks at Victoria and thinks about I don't know, Contessa obviously knew that just glancing at Breakthrough would accomplish her goal.
Sure.
But yeah, we don't actually know, and it could be as simple as that. But I'm actually going to be kind of paying attention to see if we ever figure out more about that.
Yeah, I mean, what we've kind of done is we've kind of pivoted the future of the book around our main characters. I think one thing we've seen throughout the story so far is that while Victoria is the most important person in the reader's world, she's not necessarily the most important person in the book's world, right? They've always kind of been players in what's going on, but never center to what's going on. And maybe what we're doing is we're moving into the tail end of the book, and we're kind of starting to pivot our story around our protagonist and her team a little bit. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. So that wraps it up, Scott. That wraps up this chapter.
Yeah. So do you think when Legend disappears with Teacher, do you think that immediately made me think about Teacher talking to Saint about how I wanted to get an opportunity to get Legend back on our side? Mm-hmm. Do you think this is a continuation of that idea, or just a happy accident that he'll try to exploit?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I feel like Legend is probably going to be captured by him, because he's probably teleported to somewhere where he's secure. And then what happens from there, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I don't think Legend's just going to be and then Legend came back.
Yeah, well, but is he going to come back a good guy?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're really disturbing me now, because I don't want that to happen. So
neither do I.
So I'm going to move on to the discussion questions, so I don't have to think about that.
Yeah, let's move right into that discussion question.
Question last week was, when considering important big questions, do you Sveta or do you Harbinger? A lot of people seem to think that I was asking which of those choices was right. I was just asking which one you do, but that's fine. That's fine, because the point is to prompt discussion. Indeed. And I did not clarify that. So
that is what a discussion question is for.
Yes, it is.
Discussion.
I don't know if you knew that. So Death of the Artist says that they're going to give us a hard neither. They see two sides of this argument as being founded on orthogonal axioms. The Sveta side is deontological. I believe that X is wrong. X came from logic, therefore making decisions based on logic rather than emotions is wrong. The Harbinger side is just as axiomatic on the other way through. Logic is good, irrationality is bad. Therefore, decisions made from consistent logic and ethics are good. But they're both super wrong. A good decision maker is someone who can make an emotional decision at the outset, but can weigh that decision with logic. What are my biases? Are there any factors I'm ignoring? Am I consistently violating other fervently held ethical principles? At the end of the day, this is why these kind of pseudo-religious moral axioms and pure utilitarianism are both bad bases for decision making. You should weigh both and as many other frameworks as you have access to in order to just copying out and following axioms. Okay, Death of the Artist, but then
which do you do?
How do you know when to stop?
You can never stop.
How do you know when to stop the weighing?
You can never stop.
When do you feel done? And if you just know when you're done, then aren't you being a little bit sveta?
Ooh, burn. I don't even know how to respond to that. That's a good answer, though. Fundamentally, I agree with Death of the Artist, but in practice, it's difficult.
I'm going to have to pick at everyone's answer in a similar way. So let's get things going.
Let's pick at Greckle Prime, who is a longtime listener, first time caught off enough to respond to the question. Well, welcome, Greckle Prime. Glad to have you with us here at the bleeding edge of war chapters. They say that I've gone through places in my life where I've been different things. Growing up until my mid-late teens, I was definitely sveta, doing what felt right or what I believed was the most important thing, which led to a bunch of times where I refused to understand or listen to other points of view and ended up with a distinct lack of empathy. Shortly before I left for college, I got kicked out of a church and went through a bit of a depressive phase and got super harbinger and tried to think rationally and without bias about everything, and ended up with me still thinking my decisions were right and not being able to understand others' viewpoints. But now facts and logic were backing me up instead of feelings, even if I wasn't aware that my facts and logic weren't complete. Nowadays, I've been on hormone replacement therapy for a few months now, and second puberty has been making my emotions run wild, and it's definitely had an effect on my decision-making process. For instance, I quit a job that I absolutely despised before having another one lined up because I just couldn't take it anymore, even though that wasn't the most logical thing to do. But I try to recognize when I'm swinging too far sveta or too far harbinger and try to balance it out with one another. Both ways have their pluses and minuses. Hopefully that makes some sense. It does, Greckle Prime, and I really appreciate your story and your honesty. I think this is a tough thing for people to approach with themselves sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
I think every single one of us wants to be logical in a certain manner, but has to recognize that we're flesh bags that are not logical a lot of the time.
Lest anyone think I'm lecturing or something, my answer is that I make almost all of my important big decisions emotionally, and then I spend a lot of time trying to justify them with rationalization, which is not the same thing as using logic to arrive at a decision.
Absolutely.
And I don't think this is good. I'm just saying this is what I have always done. Like even though I see myself doing it and recognize it as an issue.
I just want to say that my entire adult life, I've had moments where I've wanted to quit a job that I absolutely despised without having another one lined up, and I've never had the guts to do it. And so, Greckle Prime, I do kind of respect you on that. I think it's challenging for sure, and it is definitely sensible to line up a job first before quitting your job. But I've just never been able to bring myself to do that, and I think there's something just powerful about recognizing how unhappy something's making you, that you just need to get it out of your life, even if you don't have the next thing lined up. Maybe that's just coming from me.
No, I also admire that. My dad's done that a few times. So I see it as an admirable quality.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it shows you're willing to take a little risk and have confidence that things will be okay. You will be all right. You don't have to have everything lined up.
I think it shows a kind of self-respect to be like, no, that was it. That was the line.
Yep.
I'm done. You know?
Yeah.
Kalsubalu V2 says neither, both. They say, I tend to analyze a problem logically and then make my final decision emotionally. Kind of like I just said that I do, except backwards. A lot of that is because it's really hard to make good decisions with massive anxiety. And I have coping mechanisms to try and deal with that. Part of it is also that I try to make the decision that will be better for me after I've made it. I like that. Better for me doesn't necessarily mean physically better. It's concerning things like mental or physical health and self-care, and plain old, I don't want to regret having made the safe decision.
That's great.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Very honest answer.
I wish I was more like you, honestly. Yeah. Stelheck says, I think the Sveta Harbinger dichotomy is kind of nonsense because the vast majority of big decisions are emotional decisions. Choosing the option to get what you want can be tackled with emotion or logic, but that's not step one. Step one is choosing what it is that you want, and that can never be done with logic alone. You can do all the predicated calculus in the world, and it still amounts to goddamn zilch if you never make at least one value judgment, even if it's just predicated calculus is pretty. This is hilarious, actually, because I just logically convinced myself that emotions are more important than logic, but in my metaphorical heart, I feel that it's the other way around. I Ouroboros to myself.
I mean, sure, all of that is correct.
Yeah, I like still. I mean, a discussion question that makes you realize something about yourself is cool, and I like Stelhex has a sense of humor about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like this question because like I think these are like standing problems in philosophy. Like I'm not expecting someone to be like, this is the answer. Like nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Right.
King Bob 12. So as someone says, so as someone who likes to think I would respond Harbinger to something like this, the real answer is that it is very, very rare for anyone to give a true Harbinger response. Mm-hmm. The truth is that humans are always going to lean towards Sveta, especially myself. A Harbinger response should include little to no affection for anyone the decision may impact. Most importantly, this must include yourself and your loved ones. If the decision doesn't hit you where it hurts, where it can leave you destitute or crippled or helpless, then it doesn't matter how cold your decision is. If you don't have the level of pressure on your decision, then the decision isn't between emotional and rational. It's just you deciding what impacts other people for them. Choosing something rational because it validates your view of yourself is just as emotional as any other emotional choice you could have. It just provides a thin veneer of false reasoning over someone who is probably just callous and unkind. If the choice doesn't cost you something dear to your heart, it was never a choice at all. Yeah.
I like that last sentence a lot.
I feel like there may be no more appropriate time of me for me to not vague book and to say that like one of the like worst decisions in my life was when a doctor basically said the daughter in your spouse's womb is going to die if it's not cut out immediately, and I was like, basically one of the two parties in the room with any kind of decision making power, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like horrifying because you're like, I have no idea. Like, why are you asking me, right? It was like the Contessa situation where you're like, why are you asking me? Like, you like, I don't. If I say yes, and then my wife and child die because of my decision, that's on me. If I say no, and my wife and child die because of this decision, that's on me.
Yeah.
Can you just please make the decision? You know, and the thing was like that was a very like I would call Sveta, where I'm just like, I can't possibly give you a rational answer to this. Yeah. And yet I've never been involved in a more important decision in my life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of in the background of a lot of my thinking and reasoning here. And I just wanted to say it out loud at some point.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that you shared that. And don't worry, everyone. It turned out okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it turned out okay.
Lest anyone think that it did. Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Sarah Penguin, who says, as the only person who went with Sveta last week, I got to stick with the best tendril girl. I would have to question if humans can even be rational. Emotions, societal expectations, and the opinions of others will always play a role in decision-making, and often the people who claim to be rational, who never let emotions dictate their choices, seem to be just oblivious to how their emotions play a role. Then there is the fact that different people have different ideas of what rational is based on their goals and life experiences. And they use Taylor as an example of someone who framed everything they did as rational, even though it wasn't. I like that answer a lot. Sarah Penguin, I'm with you on best tendril girl, like tendril buddies for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think rational has to be defined in terms of what are your goals, and it is like a contradiction to say what are some rational goals. Like you can only have rational goals to the extent that you have goals that serve your goals, and your final goals are random. Yes, basically,
I agree.
They are what they are.
I agree.
Toast Ghost 18 says, I absolutely Sveta, in the verb form, which is something that I want to change about myself and move towards somewhere between the two options. I am an anxious person by nature, and when something major comes up that involves me and only me, I suffer from action paralysis and instinctively try to avoid choosing, which has led to significant problems in the past. That's most likely why I was frustrated with Sveta's choice. I was projecting my instinct to flee and procrastinate onto the same behavior, even though the root cause is significantly different. That being said, when other people are involved, I actually tend to pull a Victoria, reaching out to others. The choice would affect, confirming, touching base, and then making that decision. Yeah, you know what? I Victoria too.
Yeah, the hidden option 3 is Victoria. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is kind of what Contessa did, from a certain point of view.
She does. She does reach out. I like that.
All right. Next up, Nugget Blaster 69. When making big decisions, I tend to think logically rather than emotionally, so I suppose that would make me more of a harbinger, although I hope I'm not quite as cold as he is. Personally speaking, I would rather decide based on reasoning that I can logically compute rather than feelings, because my feelings could completely change as time goes on, whereas logic tends to yield more steady results as long as you're working with accurate information. Also, I think logical decisions are easier to defend. It's easier to explain my thought processes behind a decision rather than just telling someone I did what felt right. Basically, feelings are hard to explain and understand, whereas logic typically isn't. I like that answer. I have to ask Nugget Blaster 69 though. Were you using logic or emotion when you named yourself Nugget Blaster 69?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I love that name. It's really great.
I do too. This is an interesting comment because I feel like emotional reactions are thoughts. Like you can untangle them and there is a logic to them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best logic. I don't know. That's kind of a stub of a thought that I don't know where to take, but
yeah, I see what you mean though. Yeah.
Okay. Placid Platypus says, I'm a harbinger in the sense that I like to think my decisions are based in logic, but I'm actually driven mostly by my own personal hangups and biases. Oh, I see what you did there. That's good.
Yeah. That's really wonderful. Yeah. It's a little stealth burn.
Yeah.
Hero of Old Iron says, when it comes to business and career-related decisions, full-on harbinger. That doesn't automatically discount the times when I'll help someone else out or make a few aesthetic choices I enjoy at some minor cost. But at the end of the day, I have to think of myself first, and those decisions are made with the intent that they'll pay off down the line. Even if I wanted to be more altruistic in that sphere of life, the best way to do it is in a position of strength to begin with and have lots of resources to help others. Otherwise, my personal life, Matt's harbinger, aka humanism. It's a Matt's harbinger, Matt. That's here. I don't think Sveta's kind of logic versus emotions outlook is the kind of thing that people keep after healthy adolescence, which granted, she didn't have. While she does make some good points, it's hard not to see it as more do virtue ethics and hope things turn out all right. I think even if she doesn't want to admit it, Sveta and the rest of our unambiguously good guys do the humanist thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I like this. This is a very cool answer.
The thing that I like most about this is the recognition that kind of you are a different kind of decision maker depending on what the kind of decision is, right?
Yeah.
Like Hero of Old Iron says, business and career related decisions, I'm absolutely logic. I don't want to put any emotion into it. I think they would probably be the type of person that never quits a job without another job lined up, which is me as well. But I think that's so accurate to life because some decisions you want to make with emotions and some you don't, and that's just kind of the way life works sometimes.
Right. I mean, I guess kind of the reason for my personal anecdote was to say, like, the more critical a decision is to you as a human, the less likely you're going to be able to apply any kind of rationality to it.
Yeah.
Which actually kind of sucks because those are by definition the most important decisions and the ones when you probably want to make the right choice.
Right.
And be sure that you've made the right choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks, existence. You're like fucking us over there.
Seriously. And then finally, Deep Scorn Prisoner says, logic is lovely, but all decisions are inherently emotional. Everything from epic moral quandaries about which terrible future to choose to which socks to wear ultimately comes down to an emotional response the individual has toward the results. A seemingly logical utilitarian choice about how many people live in one scenario versus another is based on an emotional attachment to human beings. If you didn't care, why would you make any choice at all? Team Sveta. And that's true. Like that, you don't logically arrive at your final preferences.
Yeah.
Totally.
Team Sveta.
Cool.
Woo!
All right. Hey, everyone. This is really interesting. Me and Scott independently came up with the same discussion question this week.
We did. I'm so
Yeah,
proud of us.
it was bound to happen eventually, I guess.
Yes.
Discussion question is, what is the most impactful character death in written fiction?
So here's the thing about this question. It's gonna be really tough to do it without spoiling like a few
Everything.
thousand people on a bunch of books they haven't read.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is if your death that you have picked is outside of these two books and you're answering in the Reddit thread, please spoiler your answer, just in case anyone is in the Reddit thread sees it. And then when we are looking for answers to pull for this question, we will do our best to not like spoil something that isn't general known like things. Like if it's like a very famous death in a very famous book, I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable about spoiling that. But if it's like
Yeah.
something obscure that most people might not know about, we might read around your answer.
Yeah. I think do us a favor and put the title of the thing outside of the spoiler
Yes.
quotes,
Yes.
so that, because it's not really a spoiler that a death happens in a thing.
Yeah.
And then at the very least, we can read the work that you referenced.
Yeah.
The name of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Cool.
Well, that's all we have for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach out to us via our email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or our Twitter account at gotwormpod. You can follow my personal Twitter at scottdaly85, and Matt's is at more Harbinger Dale.
Yes.
I really
If you're
dropped
not-
the ball on that one.
It's okay. They can't all be home runs. If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Ward, we recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world that you can listen to podcasts.
And as always, you can find all the shows on the Doof Media Podcast Network over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you'll find Deep Impact, the deep dive into Pact. That's where you'll find Do the Right Thing, a podcast about writing. It's where you'll find the Doofcast. It's where you'll find What You Say, our new podcast about the OC. Holy crap, we got a lot of shows. Just go over there and pick the ones you like, or listen to them all. That's what I do.
Yeah, me too. And if you like any or all of our shows and you want to support them, please consider donating to patreon.com/doofmedia. You can donate $1 a month, although you may want to head over there and check out the higher tiers now that we moved them around and changed things, made some of the tiers a bit more appealing. Supporting us on Patreon gives you tons of great bonuses like voting in our quarterly fan art and costume contests, hangout sessions with me, Scott, and possibly some other doofers, access to live streams of our recording sessions like this one, our exclusive content, our Discord chat, all kinds of cool stuff. So go check that out. And while you are on patreon.com, make sure you type /Wildbow and donate to Wildbow as well, because this is his world. We're just playing on it. Get it?
On it? We're playing
Within
on the world?
Inside it. Special thanks this week to new patrons, Bedoofs at the $1 level, Team Tay, excellent name, Rob B, and Daniel M. Doof Dancers at the $5 level.
That's our new category, and I think we have our Australians to thank for coming up with that name. I don't remember why.
I think in Australia, doof means something completely different.
Yeah, isn't it like a concert, but it's like a rave. I don't think like of raving as dancing, but
well, you know what? Australian culture is a mystery.
You know, Elliot and Ruben know what they're talking about, so we'll trust them.
Maybe they'll answer on the next Q&A session. But yeah, new doof dancers, Savannah Jones and Dravonio at the $5 level. New doof troop members at the $10 level, Abigail H, Mark Andre M, and In Case. Doof Warrior, Zeke Aaron. Thank you, Zeke. Supreme Leader Doof at the $45 level, Yosef.
Guys, holy crap. Thank you so much. It's amazing. I think a lot of some of this is in response to a lot of these were upgraded people that are in response to the changes we made on Patreon. And thank you so much for showing us that we were kind of on the right path with some of these changes. But wow, guys, Matt, I don't know say nice things to them. I don't know what else to say.
You guys are awesome. all of you are super awesome. We really, really appreciate this. And we're gonna deserve this.
We're gonna try our best to deserve this.
We're gonna
Yes.
earn this.
Earn
Speaking of
this.
character deaths, but no, written fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you cannot afford to donate right now, that is absolutely okay, guys. There are tons of ways to help us out. You can share this podcast with everyone you know on all social medias, including the fantastically valuable Tumblr. It's worth so much money. You should be on it and share it on there. Or you can
Great
head on
platform.
over to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and leave us a rating and a review. Once again, we have no new reviews to feature this week, so come on, guys. We got some new ratings on iTunes. I did see our rating number went up, Matt, but no written reviews. So hopefully we'll get some of those next week.
Well, thanks to those of you who clicked that 5-star button.
Yeah.
And that ends Arc 15 dying. Next week, we enter a new arc and a new part of the story. So check back next Wednesday for our coverage of the first few chapters of Arc 16 From Within.
Matt, I remember to change the outro.
Thank you.
Are you proud of me?
I appreciate that greatly.
You're welcome.
Really smooths out this ending.
Woo!
Awesome. Click.
Woo! I am hot. Turning that AC on right now. Matt, you froze like 45 minutes ago, but we were in a zone, and I just didn't want to.
Okay. My recording is fine, so that's all that matters.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, only your camera froze. Your background is continuing to change.
That's super weird. Yeah, at least I wasn't making a weird face. I mean, any more than usual.
Yeah, I mean, you just look kind of like blasé about the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, as we're talking about all this like tear-jerking stuff.
Throughout the entirety of Ashley's death, you're just like, well, I didn't much care for her.
It's all right.
She's not my favorite character. Scott cried at work when you wrote the part about her. I almost cried when reading it. You probably couldn't see that, but I got pretty close.
I believe you. I was a little emotional. Yeah, I forgot to say like my reasoning for the discussion question. I guess we'll have time to talk about it next week. Is just that like character deaths in books usually don't hit me immediately. Like they usually hit me later.
Mm-hmm. Books made me cry. I cried in a lot of books.
Movies definitely, like 100%.
Oh yeah, movies make me cry more. I think you're right that movies hit me. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. No, it doesn't have to be famous at all. Striped Gillette. Just make sure you spoil it. Basically, it doesn't have to be a famous character death in a book at all. It's one you think is the best executed. Why is it? And you know, why do you love it? Why is it important to you? What do you think is good about it? Like, what did the author do?
That's what I'm most interested in. Like why is it the best? Yeah.
Boop, 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 boop. Maybe add that to. Well, I'll add it to the show notes.
Yeah, I think I agree. We'll clarify it a little tiny bit.
Movies do cheat with music. God, music is such a. Yeah, is it? I think we want to do books only, right?
Yeah, because like I think
there's something unique to how books handle it.
Well, you're right, because that was kind of the crux that I wanted to get at, was like I want to understand what makes a good death in text, because I kind of already know what makes a good death in a movie. Like
music.
You can literally just have sad music and that's it. So sorry, now I'm going back and reading
the chat.
Yeah, the chat.
I'm glad to hear that. I had totally forgot that Ashley had refused meds, so it was definitely the fact that she was doubling up on her medication. And now Wildbow's comment makes me want to go back and read the entire book and see every time Ashley has cotton mouth, because that means she's desperately trying to stay in control.
Interesting.
My girl. My girl.
I like this comment that dying, like the shards, like the shards say that a shard is dead if it's disconnected and without connection and without information. But clearly those shards are still what we would call alive. They're still active, but the shards think of them as dead.
Yeah.
Literally just because they're disconnected.
Dying is different for everyone. It's my song about dying. You want me to come sing it to your children?
Oh my god.
Man, I don't see your audio.
You sure? Can you refresh? It says it's done. Dying 5.
Matt, I see your audio. It just didn't say dying final. So I read it
First
wrong.
time. Oh, okay. Yeah.
She has it when meeting Breakthrough has her water bottle pre-trial. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I don't know if I did a good enough job communicating this idea that like her life is so hard, like just existing is so hard for her that there is some peace to dying, you know? I just looked at your face and was like, "Oh, Matt is uninterested in what I just said." But
I'm just still reading.
yeah, you're frozen. You're frozen.
My face looks exactly like that right now.
Oh, that's disappointing. Downloads.
I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, but like you kind of have an implicit expectation of what you think the story behind Veil 4 and Mama Mathers is going to be, and it's totally not that at all.
Yeah. I mean, like, you think it's going to be the exact opposite, right? That
right.
He triggered because her terribleness, and it's yeah.
People fixated on the Eureka thing. It's a natural thing to focus on.
Yeah, I don't understand how you don't understand why. There's a bug crawling out of a urethra.
But it doesn't say that it hurts.
I don't care.
It's just normal.
It hurts me.
I think we've made this joke plenty of times, but I get annoyed when people say they're going to put a pin in something in a podcast and then they never return to it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I wanted to find out what you were going to say about that. Like that was, you're bad at this.
Yeah. Some people are really bad at it. I think we're okay at it. Yeah. I just try not to say the phrase because I'm setting myself up for failure.
I think we only do that when we literally have written in the script where we're going to talk about it later.
Yeah. And I didn't want to talk about that until Ashley's death, you know? Gross enamored. That's so gross. At the implications of that. How long was the episode? 2 hours and 27 minutes. Damn it! I'm putting a rule. Under 2 hours. If it's not under 2 hours, we just have to stop wherever we are. You'll have a 10-hour long episode when I cut together all the arcs into one thing. That's the only time. It will work, David. It will. It'll just be less good of a show. I used to, when we record, would make notes in the script. Like, Matt, 1 hour. We must go faster.
Yeah.
Then we didn't, so I stopped doing that.
Right. I think the reason we stopped was literally just that it didn't help. It was just like, yeah, I mean, I saw that, but I have this tangent that I really want to go on.
Yeah. Trust me, it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. And it always was, is the thing. Never been wrong.
I mean, the issue is we're the ones defining that.
No tangent we've ever gone on wasn't the best idea.
A 10-hour drunk live stream. That'd be fun.
That's I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would survive that.
Yeah, Matt could do a 10-minute drunk live stream.
Yeah, a 10-minute like have a shot and then go lie down live stream.
Sure. Hey, Air, what's up? You're not warm at all, or cold. Come on, I'm really warm over here. Are you playing the StarCraft?
I am, which is funny because you're going to be able to see that even though my face isn't moving. So I'm just going to remove my face.
It's funny that your face shrunk down to appropriate levels while still being frozen.
It is. So clearly, Overcast is working.
Goodbye, Matt's face.
Whoop.
Frozen but small. The Matt Freeman story.
It's rather remarkable how much the parahuman stories have changed my thinking about ethics. I want to write like a essay about this at some point.
Do it. My favorite thing about our show is the people that disagree with me, like really want you to agree with them. So they'll say things like, I actually think Matt closer aligns with what we think. It's just Scott is convincing him. It's like, that's like rude to Matt. Like you don't have your own agency.
Yeah.
You can't think. The only way you'll think something is if I convince you. With my power to convince you to agree with everything I say. Okay, whatever.
I think the way with me, I'm usually just
5,
like
4, 3.
How could I possibly be
1.
so certain about this
everybody.
as to be willing to actually argue about it? Like sometimes sometimes we see things different ways, but I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can imagine seeing it that way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, no, that's stupid.
Actually, what I'm saying is you actually secretly disagree with me, and you get off these calls and you go to your bed and you're like steaming, pissed off about how
punch the wall,
how much I controlled the conversation and took your opinion away from me. Yeah.
Every week.
And that's and somehow we've maintained a successful friendship and business relationship for 3 years with that being true every single time.
It's just boiling up under the surface.
Yeah. It's gonna pop and it's gonna be bad.
Matt Freeman.
Also, I'm not that convincing.
And this
Sorry,
is my
folks.
co-host who looks up at me with eyes that flash. Scott Daly.
Eyes that are you breastfeeding me in this scenario?
It's parahumans. Powers are wacky.
Gross. This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into wild. Can't believe you wrote that intro. When I read that, I mean, honestly, when I wrote, "Are you breastfeeding me in this scenario?" that was just a note to you. And then I was like, well, we might as well just read it in the intro.
Perfect.
What did you think of these 2 chapters and this entire arc?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the 15 dying. Next week, we enter a new arc and a new part of the story. So check back next Wednesday for our coverage of the first few chapters of Arc 16, From Within.
Matt, I remember to change the outro.
Thank you.
Are you proud of me?
I appreciate that greatly.
You're welcome.
Really smooths out this ending.
Woo!
I appreciate that greatly.
You're welcome.
Really smooths out this ending.
Woo! Oh, I did it again. I did the outro before. You're welcome.
Really smooth
Matt, I always forget about this.
moments of silence. They're so
Yeah.
much more useful and respectful.
I know, exactly. She would appreciate it, because, like, it's for her, but also there's a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to We.
Nope, not quite. Not quite.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to We've Got Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of parahumans. My name is little old me, Matt Freeman, and this is my co-host who looks up at me with eyes that flash, Scott Daly.
Eyes that... Are you breastfeeding me in this scenario?
It's parahumans. Powers are wacky.
Gross. This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of urethra bugs, making me cry. I don't know why I stumbled on urethra. Ugh, I hate it. Let's see if I can fix it. Urethra bugs. I went to urethra like Franklin. I don't know why I did that. Of urethra bugs. Let's see if I can just pretend like that never happened. Oh no, did you have any before you left, Wildbow, for the 30-second clip? And then you'd suggest this has become the most challenging part of the editing night for me. Of urethra bugs. Oh, I'm so close. Urethra bugs. Oh, it's so close. It's gonna be flawless and nobody's gonna notice it. Oh, that's okay. We'll come up with something. Last week's focused on me, so this is gonna be a Matt clip this week. Into Wildbow's world of urethra bugs, making me cry, and alien-based death. There's still just like a little bug. World of urethra bugs. It's just a little like a little bump. Urethra bugs, making me cry, and alien. You know what? I don't think anyone's gonna notice it. I'm being me again, Matt. I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of urethra bugs.
We're all you
making me
sometimes.
cry, and alien-based death powers as we. Wait, I got a plan. Bugs. It's because of this part right here. So I'm gonna eliminate this part, and it's gonna work. You watch. Just you wait. Urethra bugs. Nope, that made it worse. Bugs. Urethra bugs, making me cry, and alien-based. You know what? Close enough. Someone will notice it, and they'll comment, and I'll hate myself, but I'll get over it.
About this ending.
Woo! Okay. That's the best I could do.
It occurs in these chapters.
Yeah, it's the death of one of our major characters.
Yeah.
You know, I think everyone was pretty
Thanks,
knocked
Tasha.
back
Appreciate
by
that.
Vista's death that turned out to not be a death. But this is way bigger than that. That concept and that the choices there and what we think the book is doing with them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean,
Rules, that's fine too. Just head on over there and see what there is to see.
yeah. All right. Well, we won't talk about that anymore. We're gonna get on into the chapter now.
Yeah, let's give the people what they want.
15.y, and here
Oh, Matt made a lip smacky. Let's get rid of Matt's lip smacky.
15.
Don't smacky the lips, Matt. He's not even listening to me anymore, guys. That's how involved he is with this craft. What?
15.y.
This star craft. You know what? I realized, Matt.
What?
I didn't realize that someone emailed me and it allowed me to. So it's really thanks to someone else. So when we were doing We've Got Worm, the episode titles were just like Arc, blah, 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 Part 1, whatever. It didn't have the phrase We've Got Worm in it at all because that was the show title.
Right.
Then we changed the show title. So if you search for We've Got Worm on a podcatcher right now, you can't find it.
Interesting.
So I think I need to go back through all the old episodes of We've Got Worm and add that to the title. So
Sounds horrible.
you can find it. Yeah, but I think it's worth it. Because like people going back don't realize that they're part of the same feed.
Yeah, makes sense.
So they search for them independently and are like, where's that one? What is your most impactful character death in written fiction and why? Make sure you spoil non-worm ward deaths. Man, we're late on that
15.y.
8 minutes and 53 seconds till we got to the chapter, Matt. That one commenter's getting closer to being right each week.
I know. We should learn from that wise person.
Nah. 15.y, 15.z. I thought we were like on track for time halfway through, and then I remembered that the second chapter is considerably longer than the first.
Yeah. We would have been okay, but I think we actually we had like a good discussion of the comments instead of kind of reading through them.
Mm-hmm. Is that Contessa ordered one of the number boys to go tell Citrine to head home immediately. Feel that way.
Yeah.
He's doing this. The chapter wanted to end on this big bang moment, right?
I mean, I was trying to find like the Da Vinci Code pattern.
So I don't know.
I mean, I don't see. The thing is, I don't actually have a problem with this off-put by it. It's just like, yeah, it sort of does strike me as like, it is kind of a fun idea, just that we've captured like
instantaneous.
Yeah. It's also interesting that he's like we've got him, and then the next time we actually see him, pretty stressful lately. Poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy. I like the.
So all right, moving on to 15.z. So all right, moving on. So all right, moving on to 15.
No, stop it. 52. 39. Yeah, see, we did the first chapter in under an hour. And then we did the second chapter in over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Take into account, and I think what Contessa, even though it's...
Oh, and also regret it if you don't let it.
And we technically skipped the part where I said, Matt, what did you think about this arc? Because we kind of did that throughout the episode.
Yeah, I kind of felt like we were talking about the themes a lot.
Many fallback plans and teacher is gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's one moment did he see him break through that made him change his mind?
I feel like that. Oh man, I don't know. I mean,
Oh, here's another Matt Lippy smacky. Just gonna cut that out.
I never would do that.
I try to get him where I find him. But...
I feel like that. Yeah, you're really disturbing me now because I don't want that to happen. Okay, Death of the Artist, but then
which do you do? Discussion question is for.
Yes, it is.
Discussion.
I don't know if you knew that. Really disturbing me now because I don't want that to happen. So
Neither do
I. So I'm going to move on to discussion questions.
Neither do
I. So I'm going to move on.
204.44. Wow. For shame. Remember when these episodes were like an hour and 30 minutes long? You remember the good old days?
I do. Not. Never happened.
I think it happened like twice. So, you're wrong. Artwork, upload new. Oh, I gotta come up with a new fun design for the next arc, Matt. What am I gonna do? Oh, did the lady send me the artwork for... No, she didn't. I feel like when someone emails you and says, it's gonna be late tonight or tomorrow morning, what they're really saying is it's gonna be tomorrow morning.
I think you're onto something. Yeah, I'm giving myself a pass to be a whole day later with this.
Right.
Is what they mean.
Which is fine. Lisa's such a different person than me, because I told her that, and she was basically like, "So they're late." And I was like, "Yeah, but it doesn't matter. The episode's not coming out till next week anyway." I was like, "Yeah, but they said we'd get it to us Tuesday morning, and they're not." It's like, "Yeah, but like stuff happens." We're such different people with some things.
Really.
Night, David. Thanks for hanging out.
Right.
Hope you have a good rest of your week. Make sure you tune in Friday morning, because we're talking about my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. I'm only kind of kidding. So my wife and I bought this book called 8 Dates. And it's basically like this relationship help book that like aids you in essential important relationship open questions. And like you phrase them around having a date night. And so we begin that tomorrow.
Sounds cool. I like things like that.
Yeah. Not because we're having any problems, you know, but just like...
Maintenance.
Yeah, exactly. Have some intention behind some of your conversations. It's important. But it's pretty cool. I'm excited. I have this thing, especially on Wednesdays, because it's the day that the show comes out, where I'm like really on my phone too much because people are discussing the show in different places. It's calmed down. Like when we were first doing it, like I was obsessed with it and it was real bad, and it's calmed down a little bit, but I still tend to do that. So like having like a set goal and time for our date night where we're talking about stuff, I think it's gonna help. Is there any chance for a Shyamalan live watch commentary? Yeah, I mean, I guess I could just like stream of consciousness and in Discord. I don't like to do that as much because like I like to watch the thing. Yes, we will. Yes, Avatar: The Last Airbender is next up after The Happening, I believe. I've always wanted to like the idea of like commentary tracks, like that we could do would be fun. You know, we've talked
Yeah.
about that before and never done it because like we'd have to be in the same place. The next time we're together, we should like plan to record one of those for something. I think
Yeah.
that'd be fun.
Yeah, that would. I like that idea a lot. That would be that'd be awesome.
But yeah, I'll probably pop into Discord as I'm watching it, especially since it's going to be very detrimental to my entire point in this week's episode. I think we'll see. I hope I just fucking love it. That's what like I know it's not going to happen, but I really hope it does. I'm reading this book right now, about M. Night Shyamalan and his experience. I think we talked about it on the Lady in the Water episode. I'm reading it, and it is fascinating, and I think I like him even more than I did.
I can't wait to hear more about this.
I'm gonna try to have it done by the time we record on Thursday, so I can talk about it on the show. Dude's a guy. Certainly a character.
This is not a dude. This is a man.
He's a character. He's got like a healthy amount of arrogance, I think.
Uh-huh. He's fond of himself.
He is, but not like it's like I told you. He's both super confident and super insecure simultaneously.
Yeah. Fascinating.
He absolutely believes without question that he's created something beautiful. But if one person says anything bad about it, that voice will get in his head and eat away at him. Oh, my wife made me an iPhone reminder to set the coffee up for the morning. Thanks, Elise. Wildbud, there's an article. I don't know. I retweeted it, but I know you don't really have Twitter, so let me find it for you. Someone wrote like an article about like stories we'd want to see comic books of, and they tweeted it at us, so I retweeted it from the We've Got Worm account, and of course your books were on there. So, but I don't know if they might have reached out to you, but if not, let me find a link for you. There's a bunch of other comics they talk about too, but or a bunch of other stories rather. Oh my god, this mixdown is taking forever.
That is not the most fun part of podcasting.
Can you believe Arc 16, man? It's been almost 2 years. Well, it's been a year. It's been a year and a half, I guess,
I cannot.
since we started.
I cannot
I
believe
think
it.
we did the first 3 week to week, and then we caught up. I think it was. I saw someone on Reddit was like, "It looks like we've reached about the halfway point. What do you think of the story so far? Or what's your favorite arc of the story so far?" And I was like, "Halfway point? I think we're past that." But maybe we're not. I don't know. I can't. Do you remember in Worm if I had? Well, I guess it's cheating because like I knew how many arcs it was, but I have very little grasp on how far into the story we are. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I will say that I'm always skeptical when people are like, I feel like we're about at the blank part in terms of Worm. I'm like, I don't think this story maps onto Worm. I don't think
Yeah.
there's an analog to be had there.
I agree. Like, I think someone was like, "This is like about the behemoth part." I think someone said, and I was like, "No." I mean, maybe. 90% more to go, Sirigrow. Yeah, you're right. It's gonna be a $10 million or 10 million word book. I think we're nearing the climax, possibly 3 arcs, 4 arcs. I could see that. One to establish it.
Okay, that didn't work.
One to transition us. One to establish the climax. 2 to execute on it. That's doable. But it could be like 6, 7, 8. 18 or 21? I think that's a fair guess, Bismarck. Yeah, that's a good thought, Quantum. I don't... Someone probably can pull that out real quick. Not me. Does anyone have, out of curiosity, does anyone have the Twig arc word count breakdown? Like words per arc? Matt sent me something the other day, and I couldn't see it correctly. I know someone's probably done it. I had the one for Pact. I have the one for Worm. They don't have Twig. The thing that where like mix down. All right, almost time to quote surf. Yeah, I agree with you, Bismarck. I think you're. I'd forgotten about how kind of tight the 3 arc. 3 arc structure is. It is pretty tight, so could be 3 in an epilogue. 4. It could be 3 in an epilogue. It could be 6 in an epilogue, but 6 would be a lot. Be a lot more, Matt. You know how long ago 6 arcs from now was? It's forever ago.
I know. I was a different person back then.
You were.
My name was John.
No, Matt. No.
Bobson.
No. Matt.
Oh.
Your name's like it.
Hmm?
Like not literally
Oh.
a different person.
Right. We don't talk about that, is what you're saying.
Uh-huh. Come on, match. Come on, match loudness. Match the loudness better.
Jesus.
It's actually my fault for making a 2.5 hour show. It's just rightly punishing me for what I did. Are you guys having a good week? I'm having a pretty good week. I have meetings. I had no meetings Monday and Tuesday, and now the rest of my week is meetings, which is kind of a bummer, but it'll be okay. I'll get through it. Oh, congratulations, Bismarck. Hope you're... Sorry, I saw something as I was talking. First full-time paycheck, yeah. I'm sorry your week has been rough, Wild, but glad it's looking up. I hope you got the website issue sorted. That's frustrating. We haven't announced what we're doing next, Enamored. We're probably gonna wait until we know when the end is approaching. Like, I've never followed one of these books live, so I don't know how that works, but I think once it's clear to us that we're approaching the end, we'll probably start moving forward and planning around what we're doing next. And one of the things that's coming up rather rapidly is covering the Dark Tower series, but we made our bread and butter covering these Wildbow books. We want to do something related to that, so, but we're not going to announce anything officially until closer. Did I say that right, Matt?
Yeah.
All right, time to look for quotes. What do you think the funniest moment of the show is, Matt? I think it's 40 minutes in.
I think it's 40 minutes in, too.
All right. Here.
Yeah, I think that's true.
There is this moment that I wanted to point out here where Ingenue calls the thralls dolls, and Scapegoat pushes back against that, similar to how... you're wrong. It's just Ingenue talking about dolls.
Oh. I knew it was wrong.
Well,
I had a bad feeling about that.
Why'd you say?
I don't know.
Continuation of speed. I don't know. Like, I don't even know if I like that, because I do like the kind of linear escalation.
What those stakes are.
Yeah.
It's like, you figure it out. It's going to be real.
Night, Sarah. Have a good one. Oh, sorry to hear that, Wildbow. That sucks. I
Not my finest work.
I could feel that because my mom pissed me off today, and I ranted to Matt about it for like 20 minutes. I was and am still so mad about it.
And then I was like, yeah, my mom buys me shirts that don't fit me sometimes.
I was like, wow, we're the same. Mine's just like a compounding issue of my family's complete inability to actually like talk to each other about anything. And even like I haven't even actually like confronted her about the issue, because she copied me on an email and I responded to the email asking her a question, And she did not answer that question. So basically, my mom and dad are moving into a new house soon, and they called me last week and asked me if I could come help them the weekend of September 20th to move into a new house, help them move into the new house. And I said, no, I can't help you that week because I'm going to be at a film festival. I can help you the weekend before. And they said, okay. And then, but our closing date isn't until the 18th, so we couldn't do it the weekend before. And then the next thing I know, I'm copied on an email from my mom to her real estate agent asking if they can move the close up to the 16th of September, which is a Monday, which is a day I definitely cannot help them move. But they did it without asking me. And now I'm going to look like the jerk that says I can't do it that day because I can't. And I'm just frustrated. My mom does this all the time. Yeah, I don't want to put the Ashley eulogy in the clip. I agree. That's kind of putting the climax in the movie trailer. I want to make people listen to that. Although I did like it. I was happy with what I wrote. I'm sorry I did that thing, Matt, where I didn't let you talk enough.
No, you said your piece and then I said my piece. It was fine.
Yeah, definitely family. Oh, that's a good one. Let's see if I can find that. Where was that in the script? It was near the end. But I wanted to do a Matt thing this time around. What did Matt say that was like super smart? There's a bunch of it. I just gotta find something that's also like clip-worthy. I do like Matt's part of the eulogy. I like the part where you said you don't have the heart to give a blow-by-blow of this fight. I like that. Let's see if I can find that. She kind of was desperate for help. She's desperate for help with him.
Getting a handle on it, yeah.
Yeah, and so she goes to Cauldron. But then we see the same woman who was like hers anymore. He is like, she reads him wrong. Just that the dude's got two personalities.
She never even seems to hesitate. She pushes verbally. I mean, let's just, overview. Ashley's getting just physically torn apart. And, I don't think I have the heart to give a blow-by-blow of this fight. I mean, let's just, overview. Ashley's getting just physically torn apart, literally torn apart by successive attacks from Spawner. She fails to hold them off because her power is still disrupted by Ingenue, but she never gives up. She never even seems to hesitate. She pushes verbally and pushes the attack. And then when somebody helps her, she's more concerned at potentially hurting an ally than about herself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull out a few things. So one of them is, I think, a really cool technique, which I'm going to just label inviting ambiguity. And I'm going to quote this text here. A cape grabbed Swansong's arm to help her get back from the spreading tide, and she flinched, her power sparking, her empty white eyes and eyebrows suggesting fear. Fear that she might destroy the person saving her, or fear because she was as vulnerable as she had been since Bonesaw had lopped off her hands. So here, Wildbow's not telling us which it is. He's posing the question to us through a character and inviting us to figure it out. So the question, is it fear for the other cape or fear for herself? But I think there's a right answer. I think we're meant to know. Ashley's not thinking about Bonesaw here. She's not thinking about fear for herself here.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And like we said last week, I think Ashley sensed that her end was coming one way or another. And survival is not something she's really worried about at this point. She's worried and I think what happens next, the fact that, she gets her power control back, but then loses her own protection of it and doesn't hesitate at all, confirms this, right?
Yeah.
She's worried about finishing the mission, getting the vials where they need to go, not hurting the people around her. I think this also echoes the moment we saw from the WASP commander point of view last week, where there was a brief moment where she had concern for herself, but then WASP commander notes that the concern shifts from being concerned with herself to being concerned about Sveta. That concern shifted. And I think it's a continuation of that here. The fear is not for herself, it's for others.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's extremely beautiful. Harkens all the way back to the first stuff we know about her character.
Yep.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So yeah, like you said, Ingenue takes her immunity to her own power, and then
Night,
she
Bismarck.
starts to
Thanks
destroy
for
her own
hanging
body as she continues to fight.
Bismarck.
Yeah, I think this is so important and so wonderful to this entire death scene, because Spawner and Ingenue, and so she doesn't hesitate.
Actually, almost by accident, like almost just in the course of action together. But yeah, the things reaching up from below to bring you back down, and she set it all up. How did she set it up?
Yeah.
Using
Looks right at her, and what does he see? Her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I like you've kind of covered both ends of a
this guy
spectrum
again.
that I was having trouble squaring.
This guy again.
Because when I first read the chapter, I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first thing that I wrote because I was gonna write something like that was really badass, and I was like, that's just such a reductive way of framing the way that death was executed narratively. Like, yeah, it was badass, but that's such a inadequate way of posing it, right? It's and I was like, it's also not. I also wouldn't call it tragic. Like, it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but it was a great crowning moment of like you said, ascendancy, right? She right. I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first thing that I deleted the Discord to kind of give my reaction.
I like this, Matt. I like what you said here. I think
I went into the Discord because when I first read the chapter, I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first
It's when you went into the Discord and you called it a badass death.
I was gonna write something like
it's not
that was really badass, and I was like, that's just such a reductive way of framing the way that death was executed narratively. Like, yeah, it was badass, but that's such a inadequate way of posing it, right? It's and I was like, it's also not. I also wouldn't call it tragic. Like, it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but it was a great crowning moment of like you said, ascendancy, right? She ascended and transcended the things that she has been struggling against, and for a really great cause. And
yeah, better than normal, but he's good.
Like, that's just such a
copy. Export file. You. Oh no, cancel. Oops. I almost exported it at the highest possible quality.
Oh dear.
Because I sent a file to Elliot earlier, and I wanted it to be at a super high quality for reasons. Whew, saved. What else can you want? What else can you want?
Yeah, I mean, I like you've kind of covered both ends of a spectrum that I was having trouble squaring. Because when I first read the chapter, I went into squaring. Because when I first read the chapter, I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first thing that I wrote because I I'm just not saying like therefore Swan Song's definitely dead.
Well, Matt, you know
we'll
what?
see.
I am. That's last week's.
I was gonna write something like that was really badass, and I was like, that's just such a reductive way of framing the way that death was executed narratively. Like, yeah, it was badass, but that's such a inadequate way of posing it, right? It's and I was like, it's also not. I also wouldn't call it tragic. Like it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like it was a great like crowning moment of like you said, ascendancy, right? She ascended and transcended the things that she has been struggling against, and
Yeah.
the things that she has been struggling against.
Boom. There's my clip. It's 48 seconds long. So much for 30 seconds. You know, it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jay. Yeah. It feels weird to do, like, to make a joke out of. I don't know. Like, I don't want to not have fun, but I like the serious ones occasionally. Okay, let's press publish on this bad boy. Publish. Bring over to WordPress. Custom HTML. Publish at four a.m. on the 14th of August. Schedule. That's not the right website. Now I get to do the fun thing, Matt, where I fix all your ums and
All right. Awesome. Favorite.
It's okay. It's only your ums and uhs because this quote is all you. It would be my ums and uhs.
When I first read the chapter, I kind of
Hey, sometimes doing this is a lot of fun. Today was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot of fun today.
I guess I'm gonna have to call my mom and be like, because I just responded to the email she copied me on. It was like, what day do you want me to come help out?
Yeah.
And she never responded. because if she says Monday the 16th, I'm going to say no.
Nope.
She says Tuesday the 17th, I'm going to say no. The only day I could do it is the 18th, and that's the day. That's my last date night before I leave my wife for a week and a half to go to a film festival. So, like, I feel like I should probably hang out with her. Probably.
Doesn't that imply that your wife doesn't like your mom?
No.
Oh, sorry. I just was, helping
When
you.
I first read the chapter, I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I
That's how logic works.
Good guess on Discord thing. It just said disc or. Which is good.
I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first thing that I wrote because I was gonna write something like. Because I was gonna write something like that was really badass, and I was like, that's just such a reductive way of that was really badass. That was really badass, and I was like, that's just such a reductive.
It read such a reductive way of framing it as productive.
Reductive way of framing the way that death was executed
Close.
narratively.
Opposite.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you,
was
Bill.
bad.
Night, enamored. Have a good one.
Right.
Yeah, it was badass, but that's such a. When I first read the chapter, I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first thing that I wrote because I was gonna write something like that was really badass, and I was like, that's just. And I was like, that's just such a reductive way of framing the way that death was executed narratively. Yeah, it was bad. Narratively, yeah, it was bad executed narratively, narratively.
Sorry, guys. They just heard you say narratively 17 times.
Was executed narratively,
Narrative.
yeah, it was badass, but that's posing it right. It's and I was like, it's also not.
When you see your the things you say written out as text, it's awful.
Yep.
And I was like, it's also not. I also wouldn't call it trash. narratively, like, yeah, was executed narratively, like executed narrative. Narratively, like, yeah, it was badass, but that's such a inadequate way of posing it, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, it's also not. I also wouldn't call it tragic. Like it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like it was a great like crowning moment. It's also not. I also wouldn't call it tragic. Like it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like it tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like it was a one dies, but like it was a one dies, but like it was a
Oh my
but like
God.
it was
Oh my
it
God.
was a it was in a sense when someone dies, but like it was a
Oh my
dies,
God. Why is
but
this so
like
difficult?
it was a dies, but like it was a
All right, Jay. Have a good night. Yeah, me too. It was a good one, right? I think it was a good. I agree. I think that's a symptom of a book working on you in very specific ways. So I think that's good. So enjoy enjoy processing that. I certainly am. Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
like it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like it was a
Come on. Are you kidding me?
it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like
There we
it
go.
was a great like crowning moment of like you said, right? She see, right? She see, right? She 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 ascended and transcended the things that she has been.
All right. One last time, all the way through, to see if we got this right.
When I first read the chapter, I went into the Discord to kind of give my reaction, and I deleted my first like thing that I wrote because I was gonna write something like that was really badass, and I was like, that's just such a reductive way of framing the way that death was executed narratively. Like, yeah, it was badass, but that's such a inadequate way of posing it, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, it's also not. I also wouldn't call it tragic. Like it's always tragic in a sense when someone dies, but like it was a great like crowning moment of like you said, ascendancy, right? She ascended and transcended the things that she has been struggling against.
There it is. There it is. Create video. All right, folks, for the few of you that are still hanging out, if there are any. I don't actually know. Great hanging out with you. Fun as always. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will see you same time next week for some light from within.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Good night.